we'll call the meeting to order. So you are able to listen in, Chris. You are online at this point. Well, since you just spoke, I think we can say we have our quorum. Okay. Does anybody have any adjustments to the agenda?
I guess the only thing, Andrew, is I noticed that the meeting minutes for the 29th, the special meeting, even though they were given to us, I didn't see them on the agenda tonight to approve.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, I guess we can add those to approve them now. Okay. Thanks. I won't. I'll be the timekeeper for now, but we won't have a set time for agenda items. Just gonna get through things as quickly as we can. So we'll move on to the consent agenda. Approving the minutes of Tuesday, November 15th, 2022, and November 29th, 2022.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes for November 15th and November 29th.
I'll second.
Yeah, Chris?
I did, for the 29th, I did have some clarity to the meeting minutes. It under action just says that the board took action and found that no conflict of interest arose. But I think it was also important that we include that the board did have comment in regards to that, even though we did not find conflict of interest in this case, that we did agree that the conduct was unbecoming of the board member. And I think that's important to have in those meeting minutes.
Hey, I'm gonna keep it.
Okay. Why don't we hold off on doing the November 29th meeting minutes then? Because I don't think we can. I think we need to go back to the video to see who said what. It's not like the board as a whole made a judgment about it, but we could put in the comments individual board members made. So why don't we plan on, we'll hold off on doing the November 29th minutes today and amend them for next time. Does that sound good? All right.
I would say, yeah.
You want to?
So I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for November 15th.
Okay. We didn't have a second on the motion yet, so
No.
I think that's
I'll
fine.
second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Minutes for the November 15th are approved. Okay. Moving on to public comment. As usual, we'll try and keep individual public comments to 3 minutes. And before you make any comments, please state your name. So does anybody have public comment at this time? Yeah, go ahead.
If we are addressing an item on the agenda, do we wait until then, or do we speak now?
No, this would be the time. So we have public comments at the beginning of the meeting, and then there'll be a public comment at the end. And between the board discusses things. So if you have something.
I would like to, my name is Gene Kraus. I'm a resident of Bethel and a member of the select board. I would like the board to know that the town of Bethel recently adopted an equity and inclusion statement that says that the town is open and affirming to persons regardless of race, gender identity, et cetera, And I think since we have a school that's in the community of Bethel, I support the efforts of the board to follow suit. I would also like to say that for 20 years or more, I was working in the United Church of Christ at the denominational level, where I was working with sexual misconduct for clergy, including sexual harassment. In that position, I understood sexual harassment to include creating a hostile environment. And I did not see that in the definition of harassment that's in the policy that you will be considering. There is a difference between expressing a political opinion and creating a hostile environment or targeting an individual with a hostile statement. And for too long, we have permitted and even encouraged, and we see our culture moving toward encouraging the denigration of people for race, religion, sexual orientation, sexual identity. It's time for it to stop. And so I appreciate and support the efforts you're faced with and the difficulties you're faced with in addressing this issue. And I support you in doing what I believe is correct, and that's what the law says. So keep up good work, and I, for one, will go to bat for you.
Anybody else like to speak at this time? Is there anybody online who would like to make any comment? If you do use the hand raise feature. Okay, well, we'll have a second public comment time at the end of the meeting for people who wish to speak. Okay, moving on to board comments. Does anybody have any board comments they'd like to make? Yeah, go ahead, Peggy.
The only thing I was going to say is we'll have to leave sometime during the meeting to go pick up my granddaughter from Bethel, but then I will sign back in when I get back. I'm not sure when she'll be ready to be picked up. So when I'm gone, I promise I'll come back.
Okay. Yeah, just let us know when you need to go. All right, thanks, Peggy. All right, move on to the celebration of learning. Math night. Oh, Shannon, you had something?
Yeah,
Yep.
Two things, and they're super brief, but one, in thinking about our math scores over the last month and what can we do, I'm wondering if we have an opportunity, and this is something maybe with Andra and Jamie, with our young students who will be sort of a captive audience in our One Planet program over the summer, to maybe encourage some, not just math tutoring for those who are behind. I feel like they're all behind. We're all behind. So maybe some math classes to be given there. Like a third of our students are in that program. So, hey, we have a captive audience there. Two, dropping off kiddos at both campuses every day. It has always concerned me a little bit. Royalton's great, we can drive right through, but it always has concerned me a little bit on the Bethel campus that you pull in with the elementary, on the elementary end, and then you have to back out. And there are parents, there are preschool kids. Now that that school doesn't have high school students who are parking there, and there doesn't seem to be as much of an issue with parking, I'm wondering when we're ready to redo that lot, repaint it, whatever, if we can manage to have a bus pull through lane and then also a lane for parents to pull into so that there's no backing up, because that to me seems an ongoing safety issue that's sort of unnecessary. So those are just my two quick things. Thanks.
Thanks, Shannon. Okay. Any other board comments? All right, we'll move on to the celebration of learning.
Good segue to our celebration of learning. So our celebration of learning tonight is a math celebration. On the Bethel campus, we had a math night. And to give a little bit of perspective and the backstory to this, Bonnie Bourne, who's our district-wide math coach, reached out to all the principals and was asking for a couple of teachers to go to the New England Schools of Mathematics Conference, which for this year was held at Killington. Next year is held in like Atlanta, it's not near us. So 2 teachers from the Bethel campus were excited and raised their hand and attended 2 days of this math conference in Killington. Came back really jazzed about math and wanted to do more, so they put together this math night. So this is sort of a little bit of their learning from going to that conference in Killington and a little bit of celebration about that math night, which I'm hoping will now become something we'll do annually and will grow to happen on both campuses. So I would encourage you to stand up and come on over so you can see.
Hi, my name is Bear. I'm from Bethel Elementary. Math night was the best night of my life. My favorite game was Spiral and guess the number in the jar. And I won both candy jars.
Hi, my name is Grant. I am from Bethel Elementary. I'm in 3rd grade. Math night was fun because I played first to 50 with Javea and I played first to a dollar with Dad. I got to guess the M&Ms, which Bear swept them from my fingers, and I got to hang out with my friends. I'm from Bethel Elementary and I'm in 3rd grade, and I thought math night was fun because of all the fun games, and my favorite game was Race to a Dollar. I also like to see my friends after school.
So yeah, a lot of credit goes to Michelle Doney for that and Jamie Rainville, who went to the conference and then brought it back. And I think we will continue. It wasn't the best weather that night, but I know some of you who are here attended, and I think it's worthy of continuing. So.
Great. Well, thank you. Could we have that video shared out either, social media
Yeah,
or
I can
something?
email
Just
it.
yeah.
Oh, so I can do social media too. Absolutely.
be didn't quite get to read all the
I
text
know,
there,
it's
so,
fine print.
Yeah.
It was great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so then we're on to the superintendent's report.
So you have my report in hand. The one thing I wanted to just add was I had a meeting with the Agency of Education today, myself and two other superintendent colleagues. I've been concerned about the decrease in free and reduced lunch data that we're seeing in a lot of our smaller towns across the state. I'm certainly concerned about RSU, and this is our third year course of free meals. And so I went to advocate with the Agency of Education about trying to figure out how they could create a more diverse approach to collecting that data. The good news is they do plan to leverage census data in regards to how they appropriate title funds. So the SU will receive the same level of funding that we have historically, even though we've seen a decrease in our free and reduced lunch applications that have been sent back in. And then the other positive note was the agency's going to try to leverage Medicaid data files across the state to collect information on regards to poverty levels in towns. So I think having a diversified approach is going to help hopefully give us more accurate information. We did a push like we have since I've been here as superintendent to get that information back. It is the third year now of universal free meals, and we expect that the legislature is going to take that up again this coming session, meaning now we're going to be 4 years out, and it just feels like the relevancy of filling out a free and reduced lunch application is not there. And so they have drafted another form to try to get families to complete in regards to income information for all families. That form, of course, was not rolled out this year. That has to be a form approved by the agency. And so they have a form drafted that we will use next year. Plus, they're collecting this Medicaid data set. So I was happy to hear that they're working on this and that they're going to try to address it, because in general, especially in our smaller districts, 20 students not returning that is a big percentage, right? Even this is our largest district, and that's still, it means something when you're looking to hit that 40% threshold for school-wide funding, and we are not at 40% in any of our districts right now, based on the information we've collected back. So it was certainly alarming. I just want to say I was really appreciative the agency had three folks. One of their folks, two folks out of finance, one folks out of grants, and then a person, the lead of the child division for food service for the agency were there today with myself and two colleagues. So I just appreciated their effort to meet with us and hear us out, and I felt like it was heard. So I just add that to my report, and I'll entertain any questions the board has.
When, like, we're not at 40% this year, when was the like, we have been in the past, right?
Yeah, last year. Yeah.
So this is significantly down from.
Oh yeah, now we're down anywhere from 10 to 30% in some districts. And again, though, it's the third year. It's still called a free and reduced lunch forum, and it was widely publicized that there's going to be free meals. So, you know, I really, when we think about equity, I really shared. I think that it's not an equitable practice. It's inequitable to ask families to have to declare their household income for a free and reduced lunch meal, when really that data is going toward seeing what poverty levels are for title funding, right? And so there has to be a better metric to do that. And so they're working on it, but they didn't have it rolled out for this year.
Okay.
But it's not going to affect our title funding, which is really what the important thing was for me to be clear about today. And they're going to continue to give us waivers for school-wide funding so that we can leverage title funds across our campuses and not have it just be specific to specific areas like only elementary or only middle school. These will be school-wide programs still across all of our schools. And then if the board doesn't have any other questions, I wanted to just highlight our interim principal, Arnold, and Principal Bowen. Principal Thomas is not here tonight. But I just wanted the board to be able to put a face to Miss Arnold if you haven't met her, and just say that, you know, I've been really pleased with Principal Arnold's ability to come in and do a great job as an interim principal in regards to, I think, meeting families, students, staff, to just make certain that folks understand that we have someone guiding the ship, right? And Principal Arnold's been working in conjunction with the staff to address our explicit instructional time that we talked about last month. And I believe she's going to be prepared to share with the board next month how we do plan to address that. So there's good work happening at the middle school, and we are so lucky to have Pam on our team for these 3 months.
Well, thank you. Yes, nice to meet you. Okay, anybody have anything else for Jamie? Okay, and we'll move to the principal's report.
So I'd say again, you have our principal's report. You can see from reading it, we've been busy all across both campuses at all levels. For me, in summary, I think we're doing lots of good work. We've been working on our intervention plans, having a bunch of school spirit, and at the same time collecting for our local food shelves, which felt like a good thing to do. Celebrating our check-in, check-out program and its effectiveness, looking at the data and seeing that our kids are meeting their goals, so it's working. I think other things for elementary are, let's see, sorry, skipping around. We have been working hard at our staff meetings to keep on talking about the math. I know it's not there yet, but continue to have once a month talking about how to enhance what we're doing in our math block. We just did a K-12 writing assessment, which we're excited to highlight in future celebration of learning. And there's some snapshots in here about our first pilot of an in-house science fair, which is exciting. And I think the next go round we'll be inviting people in from the community. But the first science fair, we wanted to make sure that the kids knew what they were doing. So they knew what they were doing. They were all excited about all things messy and how to tell me about them. And lastly, I would just say lots of having parents in for all the things, the concerts, the feasts, conferences, book fairs. I think we've sold more books than ever before. It was our best-selling book fair ever. And been practicing bus evacuations. So lots going on in elementary. So, how about you, Pam?
So, first of all, thank you. And I appreciate the opportunity to be able to help as best I can keep things moving along at the middle school while Owen Bradley is out. And so I was putting information in here about the end of my third week. So I will share where I am and what I'm at so far with some of that. But I do want to highlight the great work that the faculty and staff has been doing since I arrived, focused around looking at the instructional minutes. I guess I would say task. It's something that we really tried to peel back and look at what are the priorities and values we see and have within our schedule and the elements that are there, and then look at where are those places where we can potentially make some adjustments. And I would say we're in a really good place and have made a lot of progress in just 3 weeks. We're not ready to sort of roll that progress out yet, but we're close. There are some logistics that we still need to work through that impact any potential adjustments that you make in a schedule. So that's where we're at right now, is some of the logistical pieces. And that includes also engaging in conversation with the kids around what is potentially coming down in terms of what their day might look like. I wouldn't say there are significantly huge changes, but anytime you change that routine, we think it's really important to engage in that conversation with kids and families too. So there's a lot more work ahead, but yet it's the detailed pieces right now around that. But again, I would like to commend the faculty and staff for engaging in that with me, someone they don't even really know, facilitating that work, and they've done a great job around that. So that's really what much of the work has been focused on. I would also say that we're also looking at some systems and structures, particularly around day-to-day behavior and expectations in the school. So we're revisiting some of that work, trying to implement some more focused days to look at our data, which just, again, these are pieces I'm learning as I'm day-to-day, but that would be some good work for us to do. We're focusing on SEL right now, and how might we, social emotional learning, how might we be able to build some of those more focused skills and teaching into the regular part of our day so that it translates through all parts of a student's life. So there's a lot of little pieces in the works that I hope over the course of like the next 2 months that I'm here, I'll be able to leave some structures and some ports and some work in progress for Owen when he returns. So that's the majority of it. The other two areas I shared, the other two district priorities, I shared information from other folks, only because I hadn't been here long enough to gather any on my own yet. But I definitely wanted to highlight some information from Mary Schell and Andy West. They had shared some information, and then also some celebrations from work with the Bethel Festival and kids preparing things for that event. So that's what I have as a quick update in a few short weeks.
Thank you. Does anybody have questions for the principals? One thing that just this was kind of the first go round with the proficiency-based report cards. How did that go from your guys' perspective, and like did you
Just elementary.
just elementary?
It's just elementary. I would say every time we go to print report cards, that's exciting. I think that we realized that one campus didn't print out exactly how the format was supposed to, but we got that worked out for the next go around. And I think that it's a learning curve for parents. We have a lot of parents saying like, oh my goodness, why does this look differently? So it's a lot of education that we have to do, re-education. So, but besides that, I mean, it wasn't wild and crazy, but I think we had some parents reaching out saying, needing more clarifications than just the letter that was in there. But,
Good.
yeah.
Is there an opportunity before the next report card to maybe have an open house type style where maybe you can invite parents in to view the new format so they kind of understand the...
Actually, the timeline of conferences and the next report card going out is like really quite nice, that we might actually even hold the report cards so that they'll be able to have a conversation about the report card at the next conference. So yeah, that's also a good idea though, having a presentation and question and answers. I just think there'll be opportunity for more conversation via the parent-teacher conferences or the conferences.
Thanks. Okay, on to the business manager.
Tara will be here in person tonight too, but she's she's finishing up for me at Sharon, and there were some things that one of us needed to be there at. You'll see we've got the budget for draft 3 to discuss. I think she'll be here by then, and then she's put together your announced tuition report, and then she has all the other reports that are forthcoming. She talked about this at the full board. We will have audits ready for action in January, and so she's working through that. I wanted to mention that in her report. And we are also going out for RFP on our audit firm as well as transportation. So those contracts are up. And so those are held at the SU level, but we will be looking to take action on transportation and auditors for moving forward. And those are due to be out and posted in the next week. And we'll talk about it more in regards to under the agenda item around announced tuition. And you know, I see the figure we have here, and then certainly when we come to that discussion item, I want to talk about strategy and what makes the more sense around announced tuition. So.
Sure.
So if you have any questions about a report, I can attempt to answer them, but.
Anybody have any questions about the business manager report? Well, we can hold that for the budget discussion and announced tuition. Okay, policy committee updates. You want to take this one, Rodney, or Jamie?
Well, I can, I guess. We discussed the flag policy and we passed it. Did we get a copy of that in here?
No, because the packet was already out, my friend.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
right.
and I didn't know if you guys were gonna act on it, so you'll get it next month. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess I will get that next month, but basically what it boils down to is we've made, our policy committee is that we're gonna let the districts decide how they wanna do their policies.
You punted it to the district.
Yeah.
Punted, I'll let Simon just punted the ball.
Well, we couldn't come to an agreement, so, but it's, you know, basically it's, there's some stipulations in it about, you know, it has to be approved and, you know, decent and whatnot, and, but, yeah, everybody's, so you can do whatever you want for district.
So does that mean starting at the next meeting, we'll start having that as a
Discussion at your level.
revolving agenda item, or?
No, I mean, it's not
Where do we Go
approved.
with that, yeah.
This policy's not approved yet, so
Right.
you'll
We actually
now
will
have
have to
another
approve the
reading.
policy that the districts will make their own policy
Okay.
first, and
Yeah.
then we can make our own policy.
But we can, when it, I mean,
So it
we'll
really
look at
kicks it down the road
when we
first.
should put it on the agenda, actually discuss what we want to do.
Well, I think maybe as a board, we probably should establish a time frame that we should take action by, right, one way or the other, or, you know, I mean, I think this started, what, in April, May? So, I mean,
Yeah, it's been a while.
So what the policy says is that the policy is that we would fly the Vermont and US flags out in front of the school, but provide the local district the ability to designate a space that could be including their flag poles for the display of flags or banners. Okay? And so, and this policy's not passed yet. You still have to, the full board has to adopt it. It'll be warned, and then warned at the local district boards for adoption, hopefully in February. And so you'll have readings in January on it, and then I'll warn it for action at the full board in January. And then hopefully adopt it in February. At that point, as a district, you would need to decide really your decision, it's really one decision. Your decision A would be, where is going to be your designated location? And you could designate the flags as a board, the flagpole as a board, or you could designate another location within the building. Then the rest of the procedures look very similar to the prior policy. Meaning, student group sponsored comes to the board for approval still.
Okay.
So I think and this isn't so much this policy, but just taking it, for instance, because we select individuals from our board to represent us on the SU board. So if you take that in January, we're not going to have the opportunity as a board to discuss our favorability or not favorability to that policy to be voted on, right?
No, in
So-
January you will. All of our boards meet before the full board in
Okay.
January.
So we would have an opportunity to talk
Yes.
about it as a board to be represented. correctly.
The full board is strategically placed at the end of the month,
Okay.
partially for policy reasons.
So we will have to put it on the agenda.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. But you wouldn't adopt it, we wouldn't warn it for you for adoption until February. You'll get an opportunity to discuss it. The full board will warn it for action, we'll see what happens. If it's passed, then it would come to districts in February for adoption.
Okay.
Wasn't there another policy that was taken up?
There was a
Last night.
procedure around selection of library materials.
Okay.
Actually, it's not selectional. It's procedure around if there was a concern about a library material, meaning a community member, student, parent, guardian raised a concern about a library material, and now articulates a procedure for what would happen around the school setting up a committee to review the concern. The concern's reviewed based on the American Library Association's guidance around it. And that committee would then need to make a determination within 20 days. That recommendation would be provided to the superintendent. And then I could then affirm that with the family and or the superintendent. There's a due process for the family that if they don't like the decision the committee make, to then bring that to the superintendent as for appeal. And eventually it could go to the board if they're not happy with the superintendent's decision. So that was procedure. The board doesn't act on procedure, but it's my practice to still bring it to the policy committee to get feedback on it. That was developed by our librarians across the SU and also vetted by our attorney.
Okay.
And there will be a draft. Oh, never mind. That's on their discussion items.
Yep. Okay. And we'll move on to the task force updates. This is probably mostly facilities task force.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess we'll call it our final walkthrough. So I wouldn't say anything has really changed since EEI made their last presentation here. Other than just kind of, our committee was able to go into the school and visualize exactly what was going to be replaced or changed or left, and talk a little bit about what the potential schedule would be looking like. And I think they were going to come to us
Next month.
January with, we'll call it the exact figures, which right now, for the most part, look good where we had budgeted for. But I think they were working on some interest rate pieces that, with the rates going up, they were trying to lock that piece down, which sounded like that was a little challenging. But everything else looked pretty good right now on moving forward with the HVAC type work at Bethel, and then the lighting here on the Royalton campus. And so that's kind of where we are at. We spent, I don't know, hour or so touring the school. I guess I have some concerns when, I think it's a big animal to take on. So our facility managers or manager at the Bethel School, I really feel worried that, the poor guy hasn't ever dealt with a system like this. And even though they'll give you support from remote, there's probably a lot of hands-on type experiences. So we had talked about potentially getting him to go over and do some shadowing in Sharon for their system. We did not set that up yet, but there's a bit of a learning curve there.
Yeah, because we'll have 3 of these systems now.
And there's a bit of a learning curve with that, and so I think that was kind of did you have any other concerns, Rodney, when we looked at that?
No, I thought it was good. Obviously it's they have it pretty well thought out, the schedule, so that it doesn't disturb classrooms. They'll have all the classroom work done by September, and then everything else is.
The tie-in pieces in October, and that's where we talked about, what happens if we get that early winter, like sometimes in September it gets chilly, right? I mean, didn't this year, but what would happen there? I mean, I guess at this point we just kind of hope that doesn't happen, but the tie-in work would all be in October. But I think seemed to be moving pretty good there. There was really we're just talking about a lot of finite pieces, So overall things look like they're progressing nicely there.
Good.
So.
All right.
Yeah, and all the on the grant side of it all, it's all like the I's and T's are being crossed. So I don't see any surprises with that. Our construction applications, we got pre-approval, and our ESSER 3 grant was approved last week, which had all that in it.
Yeah,
so
great.
I'm feeling.
I think the only potential extra that we may add to that is the current system didn't include the classroom registers to be upgraded, so they were going to use the existing pieces, which, you know, some of them look okay and some don't. So when they come in, he was gonna give us an option to upgrade those, because it almost makes sense, like, to do it while you're there rather than put the new system in and then point fingers. What is it, the system or is it the register that's not working? And so I think he was gonna do an add.
Give us an option.
An add or a deduct off of it if we did one or the other. So.
Was there like a order of magnitude for cost for that?
Well, he didn't say. So there were some rough estimates, but he was going to include that on his final estimate.
Okay.
So.
All right. Great, thanks. Okay, then we'll move to the discussion items. The Performing Arts Lab Expansion Project.
Yeah, so we've got a group here that I've had the pleasure of joining a few times now, and based on how this proposal, the board had heard about this last spring, and based on the proposal tonight and the board's interest, this would be something that we would pull the facilities task force in moving forward to continue to work on this proposed project. And this committee, the Performing Arts Lab Expansion Project Committee, met with EEI yesterday. And Banwell Architects has been doing some works and drawings on this. And the good news is Banwell and EEI work closely together. So they've been able to bring EEI up to speed. So I'll turn it over to this group tonight. Thank you guys for being here.
We'll just start off with some introductions. My name is Joshua Pauly, and I'm the band director at the middle school and the high school.
I'm Amber Levitt, and I'm the director of choirs at the high school and the middle school.
I am Sandy Alton, and I am chair of the Wildcat Music Boosters and a parent of a senior.
I'm a senior. My name's Sean Smith. I'm a senior at the high school and a member of the band chorus.
My name's Ella Fromboys. I'm a freshman, and I'm also part of band and chorus.
So it's exciting for us to be here because this conversation started 2 years ago. And our objective today is to kind of provide you with a 10,000-foot view of the rationale for the project and what it would look like. We're sure that there's questions you are going to have, but this is really like a broad brushstroke of what we're looking at. Go to the next slide, please, Ray.
Sure. Mr. Pauly, sorry. You shared the slides? There's a video in here that this account is.
That what?
This account won't be able to play the video until
Okay.
you share that individually.
Okay. So, part of the context is understanding where our music program has been and where it currently is at. And within our communities, we've had a long tradition of supporting the arts and specifically our music program. People recognize names like Bob Maurer and Phyllis Cadleb and Dick Ellis and so on and so forth. And it's been something that has been a part of our community. You know, I heard comment earlier in the board meeting about our free and reduced lunch percentages. And I think that's significant not only for the tradition and the length of time, but given the socioeconomic status of our district, we have chosen to make it something that we celebrate and are proud of. When we are talking about our current program, our baseline reference point is from first year of the merger. So we are including how it has developed and grown since then. And in the first year of the merger, Our choral program at the high school grew 50%. Our band program, since the first year of the merger, has grown 110%. The only reason the choir program hasn't done the same is because COVID shut that down for a few years. So we have a program now that is worthy of looking at further support and investment to help celebrate our current reality based on where our students are at. You know, as music educators, we attend professional development and festival experiences with other directors. And when we look around central Vermont, and not just schools of our size, but schools 5, 6, 7, 8 times larger, our per capita participation in our high school music program is at the top, very top, or along there with other schools with very different backgrounds, very different populations, and I think that's a testament to the access that our school provides, that we're meeting students where they're at, that there's an equity in that the music experience is for all. So this is all to say that part of this is looking to the future, but the reality is that our music program is already thriving. It's already in need of support, and there are limitations that we have today that this project could help. Next slide, please.
Do you want? I'm just gonna hand it right on over.
Yep.
So one of the biggest concerns, or one of the major concerns with the current facilities is safety, and there are multiple facets to that. First being volume. Some informal monitoring during band and choir practices has shown exposure to students to volumes in excess of 110 decibels for sustained periods, which, as can be seen by the graph there, is beyond safe levels. So our space is not consistent, it's not acoustically designed to support the volume that we create just due to the number of musicians we have. Additionally, as can be seen in the picture on the right, that's during band class. We have, 42 students in the high school band, and it's a tight squeeze with instruments and stands. We see issues including difficult access to the emergency exit in the event of a speedy evacuation. It would be difficult to exit that door quickly with how squished together everybody is. Additionally, something that was especially highlighted by COVID and was the reason why the band program resided in the gym during 2 years ago is ventilation and proximity issues. With 42 students in there, everybody's very close together. Instruments and singing creates a lot of aerosols, and you're exhaling a lot, and it can be physically demanding. So you're presenting a lot of avenues for spreading illness and things like that are just could be drastically reduced by having enough space that people don't have to be as close together. Yeah, I think that's all I have. Do you have anything to add, Mr. Pye, there? So I guess we'll go to the next slide.
Yep.
Mr. Blue, thank you. This, in addition with safety concerns, concerts and performances, the ensemble room is in the basement, and performances generally occur in one of the 2 gymnasiums. This causes a lot of issue when it comes to moving, especially percussion equipment. We need to move it up a flight of stairs. A lot of the equipment does not fit into the elevator that the building has, and in addition, that elevator is not designed for freight purposes. It's designed only to carry people who have mobility issues. So not only does it mean we're using an elevator that's not designed for its purposes, but we're also carrying heavy equipment up and down the stairs. You can see the picture on the far right. It's hard to see, but the Winterfest that happened this morning involved carrying a large electric keyboard up and down the stairs, which has happened a total of 4 times in the past couple of weeks between the concert. It's gone up and down 4 times, so, or each direction. So we're putting our equipment in danger by putting all this wear on it, moving it in ways that it's not designed to be moved. We're also putting students and the faculty in danger moving this equipment. It's just not something that we should have to do to be able to perform. And moving a little bit away from specifically the music, but to performing, I'm highly involved in the technical aspects of the theater program, specifically the lighting design, and there are a lot of concerns with safety in that. As you can see in the center photo there, that is the tech booth that is on the stage. It is pretty janky. It sits high enough off the ground that you could get hurt if you fell off of it, and it's made fully out of wood. There's a hole in the floor in one area, and the ladder is broken. That area gets utilized during performances, during setup, when we rent lighting equipment. Because we rent the majority of our lighting equipment, we must go up and down there a lot to set things up. And it's also a storage area up there, so a lot older equipment is kept up there, and it's not great to be going up and down. It's creaky and old. In addition, the power systems that we have currently in the gym are extremely outdated and result in some subpar and potentially unsafe situations when it comes to doing the theater lighting. In the past, we've run incandescent lights, which, as many of you may know, produce a lot of heat and also require a lot of power. And the power systems that are currently installed do not meet the demands that we use for the program currently, and they're just designed for system that is multiple decades behind where we currently are. In addition to that, a bunch of the installed electrical system is just not functional, which means that we have to jerry-rig things to get where we want to be, and so it means that the equipment that we have is not being utilized necessarily correctly. You want that example?
Yeah, sure.
One example of this, a couple years ago, we did a show. It was the importance of being earnest, and something that was involved in running the lights for that show. We had a lot of lights, and we were drawing a lot of power, more power than what the infrastructure could provide. And so another student and I borrowed a thermal imaging camera from the science department, And that student stood backstage and pointed it at the circuit breakers backstage, and we researched around what temperature would cause, generally those circuit breakers would trip. And he had a walkie-talkie, and I was sitting in the back of the gym behind the lighting board, and he would tell me if the temperatures were getting close to those, to that where the circuit breakers would trip, and I would dim the lights mid-show so that we did not trip breakers and turn off lights in the middle of the show. So that's just one example of the steps that we've had to take to be able to have performances that really, it's a lot of going out of our way and learning about things that, while it's still potentially informative, it's it takes away from being able to learn about what we're actually trying to learn about, which is theater. So, yeah, do you have anything to add there, Mr. Pine?
I think that's good. Thank you.
Okay, all right.
I think you developed a pathway right there.
Yeah.
For some credit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Do you have access now, Ray? Or could you tell me which account you want me to share that to?
Conference one.
WRBSU conference?
Conference app.
Conference app. You're an editor now.
Another thing impacted by the current space is the students' capacity for learning. This is impacted on a number of levels. The first being ambient noise from the practice or rehearsal rooms. And in order to understand this a little bit better, it's important to know the layout of the current space. There's a large practice room, or a large music room, the main room that you saw earlier in a picture with the band students, and two rooms to the side that are quite small, really built more like offices. And those are used as practice rooms, as rehearsal spaces. The idea for student success is that students can access these rooms whenever they want to practice their instruments or have lessons whenever needed to support their learning in band or chorus. The issue is that these spaces, there's a lot of ambient noise that occurs both, for example, I've given sax lessons in some of these practice rooms while band is playing, and it's nearly impossible to have the students focus on their playing while the band is playing. So to remedy that, often lesson teachers are asked to teach in a closet, a storage closet in the hallway. Additionally, if chorus is rehearsing in the music room and we have a lesson happening at the same time in one of the practice rooms, it's very distracting for the chorus because the sound carries easily into the choral space. And we have a demonstration of this. Mr. Pauly gave a lesson while chorus was rehearsing one day, and you can hear for yourself the chaos that's created when these two things are happening, if we can get to the video.
It says you're the editor.
I'm the editor for the presentation, but not
The video.
don't have
The
access.
video. Huh. I
Can
just
you
pasted
request
it in. I
access
don't know
for
how
it
to.
there?
Sorry about that.
That's all right. I guess we can give you those permissions after the fact. Or I can do it right now.
Do you want to go to the next slide while you're doing that, or?
I have a few more things to say to this point while they're working on that. Additionally, within rehearsal itself in the main music room, the space was not built in a way that contributes to quality of sound. So students, particularly in my experience in choir, have difficulty hearing each other, or I have difficulty hearing each part. So because the sound, I don't know how to describe it in physics terms, but it's a very dead space. The sound doesn't travel, it's not reverberant. And sometimes just having 2 rows of choral students makes it challenging to even have the back row hear the front row, or the front row hear the back row, or for me to hear every part. So in regards to students being able to access what's needed in the choral space, it's very challenging. I will sometimes take them outside. I have in the fall when it was warmer to stand against the concrete wall so they can get that reverberant experience and hear each other, and it's a completely different sound. Finally, regarding the acoustics for our rehearsal space versus the performance space, it's drastically different. In the rehearsal space, it's more of a natural sound. In the performance space, we have to bring in an audio engineer every time and hire this person and pay them in order to amplify the chorus, because the gym does not support acoustics. It's also just for the students, not a great musical experience to be able to rehearse in a space, transfer their learning to another space, and have it be so drastically different when they step in and have to be mic'd. It's really akin to metaphors such as running on a treadmill and training for something and then going outside and running outside, or vice versa. It can be very jarring for the students once they get into the space and having it be so different. The video is still not.
You're the owner. Oh. We'll have to come back.
Okay.
To it. So I think we're ready for the next slide then.
All right. Can't see it. Okay. Another part of the why is the logistics and scheduling. The music room is shared by the elementary music teacher here at South Royalton, myself, the chorus teacher, and Josh Pauly, the band teacher. So there's one music space that all 3 of us have to fit our schedule around. This can become a logistical nightmare and creates a problem for students being able to access the music program in the highest capacity. Often the elementary music teacher has more so an ability to be able to bring music to the classrooms. So she has had to do that quite frequently this year, and that is, while she's managing it, it has not been ideal for students. I've heard numerous accounts of music in the classroom being challenging for students because they're not transitioning to a different space. She's not able to bring her materials that she really wants to bring to the classrooms to help those students access the full extent of the elementary music program. Additionally, having 3 staff share one room is challenging on its own. It would be so ideal for elementary students to be able to come to their own space and have their own music space, such as the art room, where the students have an art room that they can access. The high schoolers have an art room they can access. The PE students in the elementary have a gym they can access. The high schoolers have a gym they can access. And many other programs within the school. In the music program, we have 3 different teachers trying to teach from one space. That makes it so challenging.
Keep going.
Sure, and go ahead.
The other thing is, when we talk about our performance space and what it means, Lori Eggum, our custodial staff during the day, every time there's a performance, she spends 6+ hours setting up and tearing down to make that happen. Our PE students in elementary, we're ballparking, but they miss at least 10+ classes a year when there is a performance that happens just for tear down and set up. So part of the solution would be to make the performing space also more efficient in how we can facilitate performances. When we have our students, Sean spoke to this before, he spends much more time moving his gear than playing his gear for every performance as we navigate going up and downstairs. I think we're ready for the next slide, please, Ray.
He was on that slide.
Oh, sorry, you had already gone there.
think
Can we go back to
go
celebration of learning? This is speaking more to the performance space. We know that it's a shared space with elementary PE, but the least aesthetic and least student-centered aspect of the cycle of a performance is our performance space. The students can't be heard, they can't be seen, they can't hear themselves. And so we were trying to provide a space that is really a culmination of the work. They're already, performing is so behind the scenes in general that, for every hour of work that you are performing for such a short time, that's already the case. But for it to be such a limiting factor in that celebration, we want to see that it is a culmination of their work and they feel it. And right now, it's more of an emotion that we as educators and family and guests share with them, but they don't necessarily experience it firsthand because they aren't seen or heard like we think they should be. This is speaking more to a refresh in our performance space, in addition to our day-to-day space. I think we're ready for the next slide now. So really what we're talking about is twofold. It is an addition to our current building envelope that would be adjacent to the small gym, which would have a daily facility that we use for high school band and chorus rehearsals. It would also double as an ancillary space for our drama performance, dressing rooms, storage, etc. And we're also considering, as part of this project, a refresh to our small gym so that there is upgrades to help facilitate students being seen and heard. I think you're speaking to that part.
Generally speaking, the upgrades to the gym space, seating, lighting, acoustics, audio are all things that need to be enhanced in order to make the space a better performance experience for both the students and those coming to support the students.
Next slide.
Next slide.
That's me. Okay. So I would like to share with you some of the actions that have been taken thus far. First and foremost, a Performing Arts Committee was established, otherwise known as PAC. So that committee consists of the music educators, other faculty, students, community members, as well as some of the Wildcat music boosters. Knowing that we needed to initially raise money to have a feasibility study conducted, our first endeavor was to do just that. And as a result, we received $25,000 in a anonymous donation, as well as $2,000 from the music boosters. So our next task was to craft an RFP, which we did, and go out to look for an architect and a construction manager. After reviewing vendor proposals, we met with a few of them, and ultimately, as you heard earlier, went with Banwell and EEI, who we've been very pleased with thus far. In meeting with Matt from Banwell, in looking at some formal design, we went through the process, and we shared with him some of our criteria, including, of course, budget consideration, as well as safety and some of the other issues and concerns and logistics that you've heard previously. We also shared that a huge focus really is on and priority is on better programming, right? Just overall better outcome for students, the student experience. I mean, that's really what it's all about here. And our presentation this evening really was to share with you these concerns, to share with you where we're at thus far. We're kind of at a standstill. We can go really no further. We wanted to share with you our mission and hopefully compelling rationale for why we need to move forward. We need to bring this project to fruition. What we'd like to do is provide much more in-depth review and information, as well as the design, some plans provided by Banwell. We would love for you to invite us back to. We'd love to come back to your January board meeting, but if not, we'll take February. We'd just like to move forward with this as swiftly as we can. I mean, as I think it's been displayed here, that we're really in dire need for something like this to happen, and we have been for some time. So we're asking you, the board, to invite us back and ask your undoubtedly numerous questions. And at that time, as I mentioned, we would have Eric from EEI as well as Matt from Banwell here to present some of those, or the design that we're sort of looking at right now, not to say that it can't be tweaked, and then answer your questions. So I kind of, in conclusion, that's where we're at, and if you want to invite us now, we'd greatly appreciate that. Have I missed anything? Is there anything else anyone would like to add?
You know, I think really it's about the board having a discussion and showing that you're providing permission for this concept to continue to move forward. I would recommend that you possibly consider having the facilities task force join this group to engage the board in this in-depth, that level conversation around this work. And those two things to me seem like reasonable next steps as far as you supporting this effort.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts on, in order for us to have not just a good school, but a top tier school, we need to make sure that we're exceptional in the 3 A's. And I think we've talked about this many times on, and the arts is one of those 3 A's. And so a couple of questions I had, and thank you, Sean, you did an awesome job with going over the lighting and sound pieces of it. So how I'm separating this in my mind is there, at least on the safety, when I hear safety, it's like attention, right? So there's two things. There's the stuff that what can we do for the future, right? Planning, but there's also the immediate, what hazards do we have right now that need to be taken care of? So, some of the pictures that he had in there in regards to, we shouldn't be, on a platform that has a hole in it or a ladder that doesn't work correctly. Just like, we shouldn't be operating lighting that may or may not be safe. So I guess on that piece of it, I mean, I would like to think that we would move forward with correcting those issues now, before the next, rehearsal or play, or that regards the lighting or those pieces of it. Which I got to think that we can fix those things for not a lot of budgetary money. But the last thing we want to do is somebody get hurt, electrocuted, or something like that. And then this, I guess, I think maybe it just got done, but I'm new to this school over in Bethel, so I know that campus very well, this one not as well. But has there ever been any plans at this school for building a theater, or, a lot of high schools have a theater, and obviously the band and chorus room is adjacent, tied to that. So has there ever been any footprint laid out in this facility, or any proposals that maybe Rodney and myself can take to look over, or get EEI to revisit? I mean, as we found out, I mean, I just don't want to get off topic, but if there's a need, there's usually donors out there that are looking to put good money to good projects. And as Gene and I are on the select board, you know, they've been trying to do phase 2 of the skate park, which really didn't have any funding tied to it, and they have, you know, have raised so much money that they're gonna end up doing another phase for that skate park, just because of donations and things like that. So, if we have any of that information, you know, we could get that. Not to say we're gonna build a theater tomorrow, but if we have anything that we
I
can.
don't know if I have the plans, because I believe they were some of the ones that were lost. And
I think they were.
Because it was back way, so I can look, we have a few plans left in the office, I'm happy to look and see if I have anything.
Okay.
And my gut is telling me those are some of the plans that we had
During
already
the flood
looked for.
that we lost.
And they were lost.
There was a bond vote
Yeah.
for a theater when before the new gym was built, there was a bond vote that included a performing arts theater.
Back in like the 2000s.
But I think that was like in the space the new gym is in,
It is.
right? So I don't think that the whatever plans
I guess
wouldn't be
the first
applicable.
thing
now.
Right, it was gonna be the.
It seemed like some of their
I think that
proposals
they-
was to use some existing infrastructure and make improvements to it. But I didn't know, do we have a footprint to build something, you know, or something like that? But they must have identified a spot. But if it was gonna be in the gymnasium spot, that there's a gym there now, I guess it doesn't work.
Right, well, I think I can let you guys provide just a brief overview of kind of what the proposal is. I guess that might be helpful.
We considered the idea, that was kind of the origin. You know, it started with the 2008 bond vote and knowing that there was interest and know that our program currently needs a space. And we talked about it, and when looking at access of, or availability of footprint and also cost, we said that we would rather spend the money on something students will use every day and refresh the space we currently have, rather than do a deeper dig that would balloon the cost and make it, you know, intangible. You know, we went for the route that seemed more approachable. So we considered it as a committee and kind of talked it out, and we're comfortable with pursuing the option of a new rehearsal space and a refresh in our existing space, rather than a complete new build for the performance.
Well, I'm certainly, you know, I'm certainly supportive of moving forward and putting it on the agenda. You know, the only potential conflict would just be, you know, getting the budget done and how much we have kind of on our plate for the next board meeting. But I don't know. What do you think as far as?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like,
agenda
I don't know
goes?
if Banwell and EI are gonna have detailed figures by January. I think they're thinking February. So I think if we capture it as definitely a comeback and a focused conversation in February, it makes a lot of sense. I think we've got to give it the right amount of time.
Right.
We need, but in the meantime, I'd love to have the facility task force join your committee meetings, because that group has 2 board members on it.
So maybe I mean, we don't have a set schedule when we host our meetings, we do them as needed, but, you know, maybe if we can, you know, between EEI, ourselves, and your group, get together in January.
That's what I'm thinking.
If you wanna work it out with EEI, Rodney and I can make our schedules mostly flexible to try to accommodate that, even if it's during school time. I don't wanna speak for Rodney, but, usually we're pretty accommodating of people.
We've been meeting on, I don't mean to speak for them, Mondays at 3:30 seems to be the standing time that's working, so. It seemed to work for EI and Banwell too, when we met yesterday, so.
So we wanna do that. So action item would be,
Co-rehearsals in that space, but you can find it.
if you wanna get back to us on a meeting time, for January, that we can sit down with you, and then what about the immediate things that need to be addressed, like the ladder?
I'm gonna address that.
Platform.
That's, I didn't know that was the case.
Some electrical type stuff, I mean, cause that's a big.
Yeah, we can't have that.
Yeah, no. I wrote it down. Yeah, that was news to me. That was a surprise.
And I would say, you know, feel free, you know, if you're, you know, Sean, if you're the one that's using a majority of this equipment, if, you know, if something doesn't feel safe, you know, put your hand up, don't do it. Notify your, you know, one of your teachers or your principal and say, hey, I just want to let you know this is what's going on. It's not safe. Need some attention to it. And as you know, there's a lot of old things in these buildings, so that just kind of get forgotten over time to be upgraded. So.
And yeah, we'll plan on adding to the agenda for February meeting to discuss this more in depth. Okay. Does anybody have any more questions or comments about this now? Definitely excited to see it moving forward. I think that is definitely a need, and it'd be great to get some movement on it. So thank you for your work and efforts on it.
Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Then we're on to winter maintenance contracts.
So you were given the 2 bids that you received, so we do have to request a bid waiver because we didn't get 3. So based on the 2 bids, I need to know what your direction is that you would like me to move forward with to ask the AOE for the waiver. And I was going to say I would let the principals speak to.
I think we've used both. I think we've been really happy with Jacob most recently. Which is Green Mountain. He did come in higher with a much more detailed bid. But I would say he's very responsive and has been taking care of us thus far, because it has already snowed.
This is still just for this year. Moving forward, we'll have discussion about it, but I'd like to entertain the idea that we merge our lawn mowing and winter snow removal together as a one package in bid. We tend to get the same couple folks bidding, and possibly do it for a 2-year bid versus every year lawn mowing and snow plowing, and see if possibly that would even attract some more folks to possibly consider bidding. But
sure.
We talked about doing that in January.
Yeah. If you guys were good with it, we'll get out in front of it for both spring ball.
Yeah, it does seem like having the plowing bids earlier than December is a good idea.
Well, yeah, and I'd like to get out in front of it and put out the spring, but roll in next year's plowing with it, the RFP.
And like it was brought up, I did notice that, there was a $10,000 difference between one bid and the other. The one that was $10,000 less was pretty vague. I would assume that person had read the RFP, and where the other one had added some incidentals. So, if we needed to remove snow, it would be so much an hour, some of those things. So I don't know. I think both of them are reputable places. So, I mean, I would say if one is $10,000 less than the other one, they're both reputable. Do we go with the least expensive contract, assuming that individual understands that they have everything covered in their bid? How much actual snow removal do we do at the schools? Do we ever, at least in Bethel, I've never seen us remove the snow banks. Now maybe in Royalton we do because there's not a lot of room.
But I think actually the town came in and did it previously for us.
Yeah. Because that seemed to be the addition was the snow removal and something else, extra plowing over, or extra, it was something to do with either extra trips or extra sanding at a certain amount an hour above, which I
Yep,
guess.
so in the event of a snowstorm, outside of the contract parameters and timeline, pricing for plowing and sanding are outlined below. So that's what we're paying right now because we don't have an active contract with him. Plowing is $950 per occurrence, and sanding and salting is $550 per occurrence with Jacob. And then again, pile accumulation of snow would be $110 an hour to remove it.
Yeah, I do remember that we had been going with the lower bid before, and I think we wound up switching to Jacob, and So I don't know all the details for it, but if I remember correctly, they were similarly priced at the time. So I would kind of lean towards staying with the group that we're having good service with and we, you know, are happy with. But yeah.
But I know, like, playing, again, I don't have any skin in the game, but I know playing devil's advocate with this, you know, I do a lot of bidding in my work, and it's kind of like, if you weren't going to take my bid, then why ask me, right? So,
Sure.
you know, if I would assume that when you put an RFP together, you've already established them as a vendor of choice.
Our
And-
RFPs are not sent to specific vendors.
No, they're
No, they're just
advertised in
open.
Herald.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's not vendors of choice.
No,
Yeah.
not in this case, it's not
Okay.
vendors of
All
choice.
right.
Peggy?
No, excuse me. I was just going to say the two bids were very different in their presentations. And my question was, do we need to be more specific in our RFPs so that the bids will come in so we can compare apples to apples instead of apples to oranges?
Our bid was very detailed. Our RFP, sorry, was very detailed and asked for specifics.
So we asked for things that he didn't provide.
Got it.
Okay. Correct. I mean, yeah. All right, well,
Well, yeah.
do you have thoughts, Ray?
No, it's a kind of this, I mean, have good service from either one. We've used them both.
I would say the administration would say that the service we're getting right now is preferable. Based just on quality, right? And I think that that quality also spoke to how it came through in regards to the response to the RFP.
Right.
That detail.
So does anybody have any further discussion on this? Do we, sounds like we still, Chris, do you have any further thoughts? Or
Again, I just was asking the question.
Sure, sure.
You know, $10,000 is a lot of money. That could put some acoustical tiles in the, you know, in the band room. You know, so I'm just
Sure.
trying to think of, you know,
Yep.
those types of things. So.
Well, we need to take action, so, as, you know, my inclination would be to go with what we currently have. But
The motion would be to accept the bid from Green Mountain?
So your motion has to be specific wording because we have to get a bid approval first, or bid waiver first.
Oh, okay.
Do you have the motion?
Yep, so I'll give you the motion language, but I'm gonna answer Chris's question first, if that's okay. Chris
Sure.
asked me what was in the budget currently for maintenance. So for both campuses, for both winter maintenance and spring maintenance, we have $119,000 in the current budget.
Okay, and so if we use 71 here, right? Is that what it is? What's the spring maintenance look like typically? Is that a $30,000 or $40,000 endeavor, or?
I feel like it's closer to 50, but I could be wrong. And, you know, I think it's also difficult because, like, you know, clearly costs have gone up since
No,
we made the
understood,
budget,
yeah.
so I would kind of expect this to be a category that we would wind up being a little higher on. Are you pulling up the, yeah, okay.
Pulling up the contract.
Peggy or Shannon, do you guys have thoughts?
I agree with you, Andrew, that going with a service that we know to be reliable and is working well and gave us what we asked for in the RFP seems like a smart move, even though it's a little bit more. I think you get what you pay for, so I think that is reasonable.
Your contract for the spring maintenance last year was just shy of $58,000 for both campuses.
and I could be wrong, but my recollection is it was things like sanding of the sidewalks and, you know, that kind of detail work, which is safety related, that, you know, I think that we've been happy with the current vendor with.
Sure. You're right, it's the details. Yeah. Same, yeah, it was the same case in the summer.
So, if you're ready, the language that you would use in this motion would be to award the FY 22-23 winter maintenance contract to Green Mountain Mowing LLC upon bid waiver approval from the Agency of Education.
I gotta get myself together.
So moved.
I'll second.
Let's say that.
Peggy and Shannon, did you hear that okay?
I did, but it should be RUD, correct? Not FBUD?
Oh, sorry. Yes, thank you.
Oh,
I haven't had enough caffeine yet.
And I just want to make sure Tammy gets it.
Yeah, could you say that louder, Kara?
The motion?
Yes.
For White River Unified District to accept the FY 22-23 winter maintenance bid from Green Mountain Mowing LLC upon bid waiver approval from the Agency of Education.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion passes.
And that process usually is very quick. I submit it, I usually hear back within a day or two, and then I'll issue a contract for Green Mountain Mowing.
Great. So we won't have to pay the extra charge when it's in.
Just for
Good.
what we've done so far.
Yeah.
And the biggest storm of the year.
All right, then we're on to draft 3 of the 2023, or, yeah.
Hi, just for the minutes, did
2023,
Rodney
2024 budget.
motion that, and then was that seconded by someone?
It was motioned by Chris, seconded by Rodney.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a full draft of the budget now.
Yeah, so this is your first view of all your line by lines. This encompasses what we did in draft 1, student support segment, and draft 2 of your general education segments, and then adding in all of your other object codes on the expenditure side of things. I tried to make notes on the items that we identified in the prior budget cycle segments, and then any changes that I made with the admin and then on my own with regard to the numbers we received so far. So quickly, just down on your tech center tuition on behalf of, we received the FY 24 rate from the Agency of Education already. So what we're using is your FY 23 6th semester average of students times the FY 24 rate, because we do not have the current 6th semester average from the Agency of Education yet. So that will be a line item that is subject to change once we have that 6th semester average from the AOE. And what that is, just so you know, those that are new to the board and haven't been through this or new to the community, on behalf of is both a revenue and an expense that zeroes itself out, because that is what the Agency of Education is actually paying to the vocational centers on our behalf. And then you also pay vocational tuition based on your 6th semester average to the vocational centers that you have current students enrolled in. So that's why you'll see both the on behalf of, the next one down is your vocational tuition itself. Other big adjustments that are in this draft of the budget, workers' compensation based on industry averages, based on the increase in healthcare, based on the number of workers' compensation claims that we've experienced both in our own supervisory union and we're in a self-insured group. So we also are subject to the claims overall in our self-insured group. There is a pretty substantial increase in the workers' compensation expense lines at this point in time. I do not have our rates for FY 24 yet from the carrier. Those usually come out late spring. So you'll see some increases on all the workers' compensation lines under each function code.
The only change to staffing in this version of the budget versus last month was the middle school foreign language was put back in. So that's something that you could discuss as a board again. I chose to put that back in based on community input I've been receiving since that last draft. And concerns around the leveraging of VTVLC for our middle school students. So that's the only FTE change that was made since the draft that you last saw on instructional staff. But I wanted to highlight that for you.
Okay.
And then last night, we approved, the full board approved both the central office budget and the special education budget. So you'll also see under each one of the SU special education assessments that that'll be adjusted now that I have an approved budget for both of those. And we are going out to bid on our transportation contract. So there's just a placeholder for transportation assessment right now.
Okay. Had you raised your hand, Shannon?
I just wanted to check in on the foreign languages. I assume if we can't hire someone, which has been a big part of the problem for the middle school, that we would still have virtual available to our students anyway.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, the goal, I mean, I'm gonna really look to work with my foreign language teachers and my music teachers to figure out how can we best advertise and recruit across the SU in those departments. We have a bunch of like partial FTEs, right? Like 0.6 at the middle school, 0.4 at RSUD. You would think that would make a nice 1.0 FTE. So some of the other district boards have increased some of these areas with the hope that we can better match them, possibly, as full-time positions. So I'm hopeful that that's gonna help. And, you know, I think we may actually advertise these positions at the SU level. Like, we need SU foreign language, and then, because I need a couple, and then interview them, and then see where the best fit is, because geographically, we just expand big time, right? So I think sometimes people come across like, oh, well, this is 0.6 middle school. It's not like, they don't think to connect 0.6 middle school and 0.4 Rochester Stockbridge, right? And that's how we have historically advertised them. I'm rather gonna go out and say, WRVSU needs 2 music teachers at the elementary level. WRVSU needs 2 full-time foreign language teachers, right? Get them to interview. And again, it's as much about us selling ourselves as why this is a great place to come and work as it is folks helping us understand why we should hire them. It's just, again, you've heard, we used to get 60 candidates for a PE teaching position, and now we get 3 if we're lucky. Like, that's just the change in the nature of hiring right now in education. So we're gonna, we are gonna approach that a little different this year to hope that helps.
Yeah, that sounds good. Would we wind up basically having that be a SU?
Yeah, so what we do sometimes is we put them on an SU contract, and then Tara bills back on the districts.
Whatever the FTE is. So you still budget for it locally.
Right.
Whatever the final placement is for the FTE, I then bill back. Which also, I mean, per the state negotiated contract, that's what we're required to do. For the health insurance, like, you have to go, the employer that has the highest FTE either has to write the contract at a full FTE, whatever the total is, or it has to be an SU-wide contract.
Okay.
So yeah, we've started to do that with all of our shared teaching positions across districts.
Makes sense. Okay. I did have a couple questions on some specific lines. One was the child nutrition. If, like, we haven't had to do that recently because of the school-wide lunch program.
You still have an assessment. there still is going to be an assessment for 22. As you recall, when we centralized the child nutrition program at the SU, we said we would do a look back on that first year. So you will still be assessed for the child nutrition program for any potential deficit that the program ends with, because it cannot carry a deficit.
Sure.
So that'll be looked at the close of each fiscal year, and then billed back to the districts, similar to what we do when we reassess for special education in central office.
Okay.
So it's still important to have that in your budgets.
So was that actually zero? It has the FY22 actual of 0 for that.
That's the yeah, so we haven't done anything for 22. We're still finalizing 22. So that'll be assessed once we get the final from the the SU audit, and we have the final fund balance for child nutrition, then that's where that bill back will come.
Do you wind up just like putting that into the FY22 financials, or do we wind up?
It's a prior year assessment, yes.
Okay. All right. And I know we did have a deficit on that, so.
Yeah, I will say, and Tara can correct me, it looks like our work around centralizing and then coupled with the universal meals, it has decreased the deficit across the SU significantly compared to what we had.
And for this fiscal year, for 23, our team met as a team and capitalized on our USDA foods. So that hadn't historically been done, so that saves us, in some instances, $40,000 to $50,000 in food costs, because that's what we get from USDA.
So when we're saying deficit, do we mean like we're actually breaking even on it now, or it's still?
No,
we're never gonna break
You
even.
can't break
Okay.
even, because
I didn't think so.
the reimbursement rates that you get
That is too small. Well,
do not, they don't provide enough revenue to offset all your salary, benefits, increase in food costs. I mean, the Agency of Education, the state, the USDA has given us extra funds this year with the supply chain grants, and we've been awarded them the last 2. We have a 3rd round that's coming through that we've submitted our application for. So they're trying to help offset that increase that we're experiencing due to food shortages and supply chain issues. So that's obviously helping in our deficit. But I don't know of any program that I know of in all of my meetings with the child nutrition team in the state of Vermont that pulls a substantial profit in the child nutrition program.
okay. Yeah, I guess just, we've kind of left that line alone, so at some point we should figure out what it actually.
Yeah, so once
winds up
we know
being.
what the FY22 assessment actually will be, I mean, obviously your assessment's gonna be one of the largest in the SU because you have one of the highest assessment percentages in the SU based on your student population. So once we know what 22 was, we make our projections for 23, and we'll start building that assessment each year based on the prior year.
Yep. The other one that I had a question about was the debt service long-term. We just finished paying off the $55,000 yearly payment, so I was expecting that to go down, and it hasn't.
I showed that I had one more payment due. That's why I kept it at the $250. I will verify that with the bond bank.
Well, I looked at the
Let me-
audit payments, and it made it look like, well, maybe I had it off a year. I don't
I'll
know.
verify with the bond bank and let you know.
Sounds good. All right.
It'd be great if it was.
Yeah, that would be. Okay, those are my 2 line items that I had questions about.
Those are good questions.
Does anybody have other questions about this itemized budget? One thing we talked a bit about in the finance committee meeting was the state yield has gone up a significant amount, which is good for the potential change in tax rate. I forget exactly what the percentage was, but like it was a pretty high percentage. And we also have a slight increase in our equalized pupils, which will also help. So as far as looking at a 4% or 4.25% increase in the total budget, I'm pretty sure that's less than what the yield change would be. We still don't really know what's going on with the CLAs, which is the other piece of calculating the tax rate, and those are probably going to go up, one would imagine, given the housing market recently, but the other pieces of news were good.
You'll get the administration will come to you too with all your revenue projections next month. And again, I said in my report, we'll need a special meeting, right? And so what you'll get at your January meeting is this with any fine-tune adjustments, the expenditure budget. Then you're gonna get your revenue and your tax sheet. And then we'll have some decisions to make in regards to, remember, we're definitely gonna have a surplus. And so we'll have some decisions to make about that surplus around, you know, how much do we put at it to offset taxes? And how much do we put away in our capital improvement fund, right? We put a big chunk last year into capital improvement. I think a goal again, especially with the yield, would be to try to put a bunch of that away. You know, strategically, we've leveraged ESSER to try to build up these surpluses so we can put it away. So I think it's also important then that we remind our constituents that part of the surplus is based on how we leveraged ESSER, right? We covered some expenditures in the local district budget in order to build up surplus to put money away to deal with some of this deferred maintenance.
Yeah, and what was I going to say? I think part of that will be having that long-term plan that EI should help provide us in January to say, you know, we're going to be looking at these expenses, so we want to put this amount aside. Would definitely help.
And remember, this budget also does include, though, we're continuing to budget for money to be put into your reserve funds every year as well, which we had not been doing until.
That's like $40,000.
Yeah, it's not a lot, but it does continue to include that.
Okay. My one thought again was, you know, given our test scores and kind of the deficits that we're seeing on that end, if we have a big surplus, you know, I am concerned about if we use a big chunk of money to buy down the tax rate and then.
No, I don't want to buy down.
Right.
No. I think we should put it away.
Sure. Well, my other thought was like if we took some of that and did like we usually try not to do like build in positions that we're then going to have to fund later. But if we planned on just a short-term surge of some money that we then offset with some of the surplus with the idea that it goes away next year
You could in theory do that same thing by setting up a general education reserve fund, which then and you put some funds into that, and then you could set that fund up that it could be used for things like that. Or
so we could say
giving
like
funds.
use this for the next 3 years for this purpose. Yeah.
So say you needed, additional intervention, or you needed you have a bubble in students. So
Yeah, I mean,
you have a general
for next year, we're still carrying ESSER funding for you again for next year.
So you think you can do that through that?
We could do that through that if we needed to, because you're budgeting for those folks locally as well.
And once that goes away, then if you start building, so you could do it in a couple of different ways. So it's just some different food for thought.
Sure. If we do the general education building reserve fund, do you need to get that approved by the
Yeah,
voters?
we would have to add it as an article on your warning, if you wanted to create a different reserve fund.
Right.
And then, once it's approved, then every year if you fund that through a surplus, then you would need to also ask your voters to authorize you to put that money into the reserve fund. Once the reserve fund is built and established and funds are in it, you as the board have the discretion. Your administration would come to you just like they do for the building reserve. They would come to you and ask you for utilization of those funds for whatever purpose it may be used for.
The only other, I will just tell you about staffing. The only other thing that I know that Principal Thomas is looking at is possibly looking at not having 1.0 driver's ed, but we may take and actually leverage that 1.0 driver's ed to a part-time driver's ed, but take that 0.5 FTE and maybe put it toward what do we call it? I don't want to say shop, but it's,
Yes. Technical education. More
what is it? What's it titled under?
Tech education.
Under technical education. Right now we have a 1.0 as we continue to build, as we're bridging out our pathways programming and things. It seems like the high school is like really looking to utilize our shop space all day. And right now our teachers at the middle school in the mornings. So I think that there could, I just don't want you to be surprised, right? Like in January, you may see that there's been a decision made to have driver's ed be 0.5 because we can schedule it and staff it that way, but reinvest that 0.5 into tech ed.
That'd be great.
So I think most of the questions that I had were answered. The two questions I have left, and one is the not so easy one, is, so based upon our proposed budget currently, is where would that sit tax-wise?
I have not even run those numbers yet.
Because, and I guess in my brain, how I work is I always try to figure out is, what is a fair tax rate that we're getting ready to put out there to the citizens, and if we have the opportunity to put more away, then we should take advantage of that. And then the second question I have is when it comes to the facility, the operation of buildings fund, what is the definition of what that money could be used for? And I guess
Operations every building.
I guess so. What I've been working on is sitting down with each building manager to find out what are the things that aren't really covered in the budget, but we really don't want to go to like a bond vote. Like it might be update the bathrooms or something like that, as well as athletics. I have not gotten to the arts yet, but can that money, like I'm going to use an example, like if we need to update the sound system in the gymnasium, can that be used under building funds? Or if we wanted to install a large, condense our 13 little sheds out here into one big building, could that come out of those funds, I guess?
So it's capital improvements.
Yeah.
So it has to be over $5,000
Okay,
because that's your capital.
sure.
Anything over 5,000, and it needs to be related to the operations of your building.
Okay, so
Yeah, and Windows
Yeah,
is something we haven't tackled that
Well,
I think we need to be considering. Yeah.
because I think some of the things that have come forward so far is we're missing the boat on certain identities. So one that comes to mind really well is, and probably people don't even know, is we actually have a pretty good track team, right? I mean, our track team's actually been winning the state championship, but they really have nothing to practice with. So the mats are very expensive and outdated, and they're not so easy just to take money out of the athletic budget to buy new mats. They're kind of a $10,000
That
type
one might
deal.
be a stretch.
So, but you know what I mean? So that's kind of I guess a thing. How do we look at that
That should be something
and
that
start building that
when
into?
the building administrators are meeting with those department managers, like those should be some of the conversations that they're having, because those types of things absolutely should be included in the budget.
Right. So I'm trying to figure out that there's definitely things that we're gonna figure out, but we may
That
not
would
be in
be
this budget,
equipment,
but
right?
Because that's
But
definitely.
if we were gonna put in a track,
yeah. Well, I'm just starting with the little stuff.
yeah, no.
So an example, if you wanted to
yeah.
put in a shot put pit,
Mm-hmm.
that's something.
Careful how you say that.
I tried to be very careful how I said that. Those
Yeah.
types of things, like that is something that we can in fact utilize a capital
Okay.
improvement fund for.
All right.
Yeah, not supplies or
No.
equipment.
Okay.
Okay. Just to give you, I looked up the state yield change and it went up 16%. So we could increase our spending 16% and those two things would cancel themselves out. So
Well, I think it's great to be on both boards because the way things are at the municipal level are very, say, easier. We have full control over what we're doing for the most part.
Right.
And at school, there's a lot of calculations that could go up or down, and as we've seen over the years, our budget goes up, then it goes down, it goes up, and it goes down, and try to create that nice bell curve where we don't want to lose opportunity, but at the same time, we don't want to take advantage of things that.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
So if it's a year where the yield's up and we can, like Jamie was saying, tuck money aside for a rainy day, knowing that we have a lot of things that
And
are
like
coming,
Andrew said, the
it might be
CLA
good.
is our.
Yeah.
But we also don't want to.
unknown.
We also don't want to miss the boat and find out.
That we get, and that can really have a substantial.
Yeah, right.
and even when the yield is great, if the CLA goes down.
Right. Which there
It's
is.
going to be different in both towns
Yeah,
too.
so
Yeah,
just-
it's
so that's our
challenging,
last
yeah.
piece that we usually get is the CLA.
Yeah. Okay.
That one can have a massive impact on the final tax rate for each individual town.
Yeah, so that's why generally, like when I'm thinking about it, I don't like the idea of if we want to peg a 2 cent increase or whatever. Like we really can't control it. Like
You can do it at your unified tax rate, like that can be what you focus on.
Right.
Is your unified tax rate, but then, or the equalized tax rate.
Right.
But then in each individual town has its own impact.
And I'm just to share, I don't want to get in the weeds, but like at the town, we tried to figure out what is a realistic ask for our citizens. And granted, the only thing we're off of is it's the grand list, where how much is the grand list going up, and then we can say we feel that a 3 cent increase is fair. And then how if we sit in there and saying right now our budget's only 1 cent, let's put 2 more cents away for any day. And I know the
Gotcha.
school is a different thing, but
Yeah.
Yeah,
the problem is like we find out about all the details so late in the process.
I don't get it.
Yeah.
No, it's tough.
They almost rather put, and I know that you don't want to do it later, but it's probably almost better if they did the vote in June rather
We do it in May.
than March, because
We
it's
have
like
two boards in May
it's backwards,
that do their meetings in May.
Yeah.
And I have specific concrete numbers for them in May.
Right.
But then if it goes down, then.
But then if it goes down, you're rushing around. I understand, but
Really
Yes,
in
that's your
trouble.
downfall.
it's difficult to go to.
Yeah.
Well, it's difficult to
always
even
nice
back
when
it
they-
up at town meeting day, right? Because you're trying to back up your numbers, but you don't really have your numbers, right? And we've all been down that road with those discussions. So.
And it's also like we vote on new members at town meeting day, and so like bring people into the middle of the budget
Yeah.
Makes it challenging.
challenge. Anyway. Jamie, did you have any thoughts about like, would it make sense to try and build in some sort of surge for?
I think we'll know more. I mean, we're still equalized pupil numbers are still in draft form, right?
So I more meant like to address our test scores. Like, it seems like we have a surplus. We know that. We know that this year is looking somewhat promising for tax rates.
I mean, I still stand, the principals can correct me. I mean, I still stand on if we could hire right now all the positions that we actually have budgeted for,
Yeah.
we'd be in a good place, right? I think, and at the middle school, I think our work is like, how does the schedule support intervention with Fidelity, right? Like that's part of what they're working on. How do we increase universal instruction? We put foreign language back in based on feedback we received. I don't believe we're gonna intervene our way out of where we're at. I think it's gonna be on how do we execute universal instruction for all kids. And so we did add another elementary teacher in this budget to give us hopefully more predictable class sizes at the elementary level. And we have our full bench of interventionists in this budget. The problem that we had is that we weren't able to hire one of the elementary teachers we're budgeted for. So we had to move one of our interventionists that was budgeted for into the classroom. So we're still short even in interventionists right now that we haven't been able to hire.
Yeah, I mean, I guess though, like, if we did budget for it and we weren't able to hire somebody for it, then it just kind of rolls over into the next surplus. Which,
Right, we could do
isn't the
that.
worst thing.
And that could be something that we choose to do in January, right? Like my worry from where the nice thing about your budget is we get to control it all.
Right.
Right? In every other district board, I was just in a district prior to now, Tara and I, where the budget is going up, we're projecting it's up 9%. And literally 7% of that is based on tuitions. Like we have no control over it, right? And so with this budget, you get to control it. 4% right now in the economy we're in, feels really good, right? And, you know, I think one of the things I feel like this is our last year, I think, of the ed fund having a decent surplus. I do think they're gonna put that money towards universal meals, so I'm worried the yield's gonna change. I do not think the administration wants to put the ed fund surplus toward anything other than taxes. So the tax letter comes from the tax department. The legislature has not weighed in on what to do with this ed fund money yet. So my worry is that we've received this rosy picture from the tax department, and that they're going to use this ed fund surplus to once again pay for universal meals for a year. I could be totally wrong, but that's my sense, is that there's going to be a bunch of different groups trying to figure out what to do with that ed fund money.
Sure.
Last year, universal meals in putting some money back won out, but it wasn't just putting it all back. That tax letter really speaks to taking the ed fund surplus and putting it back to the taxpayers.
Okay.
So I'm worried the yield's not going to end up as well as they originally said.
Remember in the yield, like we had 3 different figures.
Yeah.
So I'm still being really conservative with how much we're going to have to.
Yeah. No, I understand that. That makes sense. I just wanted to.
No, I appreciate that question.
I think we should do as much as we can to, you know, enable you guys to have the resources to address the issues that we're facing, and so, you know, it seems like
But
we
that's
have an
good
opportunity.
information to have too, because if we build this year's budget with space in the yield, but next year the yield changes
right
to the negative, then our budget, you know, obviously changes drastically as well.
I mean, do we want to look into having a general education reserve fund? Because I mean, that would help smooth out some of these big swings.
Well, yeah, I also think why I think that if we could get, I also think we're coming forward into some difficult budget seasons.
Sure.
I think this is our last easiest. I do. I think that in Vermont we are the forecast is that it's going to get really difficult, and so the having an ability so that if our budgets are just going to get tighter and tighter is my point, right? So if all of a sudden we had a need and we had a reserve fund to fund that need during the school year, or if we just miscalculated the fact that a class size was off and be able to go to a reserve fund for a position that wasn't budgeted that we could utilize in the future, it could serve us really well.
Okay.
Because we're not going to have the cushion that we have right now with the ability to how we've been able to leverage ESSER, right, and build us some safety net. That it's been nice to know we've got a safety net there. There's no safety net here, and we're going to come up to tough budget times.
But I think that's
safety net and extend it.
Yeah,
that's what we're looking to do. So,
But I think that's also very important for us to understand that potentially the budget times could be coming very tight. So to take full advantage of what we have now and tuck that money aside, because
You won't be utilized, I mean, just based on past experience and what we've seen. I mean, when these federal funds go away, you will not see the quantity of surpluses.
Right.
Oh yeah.
All right.
I mean, that's absolute. Just you're not.
Yeah. Understand. Well aware of
So we have to be careful. We have to tuck some money aside, but at the same time be careful not to grow our program that isn't sustainable. Right.
That is my one worry, right?
So,
and
new
I
positions
really want to
or-
bring, what we've tried to do is, in the positions we funded for ESSER, is that those positions are there for the long term. What we did not get into is a position where I'm having to reduce in force next year. The whole plan has been to budget these positions locally and with our expected title funds to fund them moving forward, and not have positions that we're looking that we can't continue to move them forward. In all of our districts, the plan is to keep the positions that we brought on and maintain them.
Yeah, no, I mean, that does make sense, but I do worry that, you know, when you have whole classes that are behind, and like, I understand how you want to have your universal instruction to bring everybody back up, but, you know, like, it's hard to both catch up and then do the stuff that you need to do. And so, like, if we know that we have this short-term need, like, going into it, say, this is going to be a short-term thing, and, yeah, budget accordingly. But, anyway. I think I'm ready to move on.
No, I mean, I completely agree with you. I mean, I think if we have the surplus and we do have a deficiency that we've,
Yeah.
it'd be, I mean, trying to play catch up over years may not happen.
Right. Otherwise, we're just waiting for them to.
You may have a
graduate
group
out.
of children here that may continue that deficiency up the ladder, right?
Right.
But we also have positions we can't fill, so, you know, you could have it in the budget and not be able to fill the position too, you know, it's
Right.
kind of a.
But as I said, like, if you do
such a
that,
challenge.
if you do that, then it just winds up being a surplus that you can then,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
it's not like that money just goes away. It's just money that we haven't spent.
I think we all agree. Let's go with the surplus.
Yeah, let's have surpluses.
It's easy.
Good plan. All right. Anybody else have any last thoughts, Shannon or Peggy? Then let's talk about, let's see, Board Code of Conduct Policy Update.
Yeah, so just an update, we talked about this at the full board last night and at the policy committee. Our attorney who's been working on policy for us is an attorney at Fletcher and Page and Stitzel. And I can't remember Marilyn's last name, so I apologize, but she's really been focusing on policy work for us. She's done some research that includes school district policy and select board policy on code of conduct, and is going to have a draft policy for the full board to review in January. So we'll have a policy, and then it'll get commented on during all the local districts in February. So she's working on it. There's not a model policy of the VSBA for it, right? There's a code of ethic, but not a policy. So she needed to do some research on it, but she's going to put together a draft by January.
And there's some good select board models out
Yes.
there, but not necessarily school related.
Yeah, and I do think it's, like, I think there's some misunderstanding out there. Like, the school board can't remove other school board members. So whatever we're doing would just be kind of like a policy to say, you know, this is kind of a verdict from the school board, but it doesn't actually have any.
I think what it does is it establishes, one, a commitment from the board members, but two, gives us a template to deal with some misconduct if it happens. Now, like Andrew's saying, we can't remove a board member. However, there could be steps like.
It's just a way of kind of saying,
you know,
this is what the board thinks.
Right, on
procedure
a
for getting.
first level, you know, it's an apology letter, or a second level, it's a potentially censor from being on a committee, or, you know, those types of steps. At least it's something that the board has, so you don't get into, you know, you're playing favorites, or, you know, it's a concrete set of rules that we can follow. Well, other boards can follow that when we're not here, right? So the next generation of board members, so.
Okay. The LGBTQIA resolution. Have people had a chance to review it at this point?
Yes, I have. I've read it.
Okay. Do you have?
You know, it basically supports what we're already doing. I don't see where it really adds anything. We're following state law as it is, and just really just supports that.
Okay.
So again, I kind of went into it with open eyes. So anytime there's a, we'll call it a policy, or in this case, a resolution. It's not a policy, but it's a resolution. I guess the first thing that I do is you know, is there a need for the policy or the resolution? As I had asked for some information in regards to, you know, I collected some data based upon campus behaviors that we currently have at both campuses. At least the data that I asked for shows really no significant issues towards a certain group of children. So I guess kind of digging more into the resolution on my end of things is, and I think a lot of times with different resolutions, it's the same way, is I think there's a lot of goodwill that is used in putting a resolution together. I think there's a lot of good things and that we want to do things positive, but often these can do more harm than good when it comes to, you know, making it up again. But say there's 10% of population of students that we want to do a resolution for. In this case, we have a group of students, but then there's the other 90% of our student body that deals with very similar instances every day that we don't have a resolution for. So, you know, bullying, harassment, usually when children do bully and harass each other, it includes, you know, things that they can see, things that they hear, sexual orientation, you know, so that's how people bully and harass. So I think to be fair to our whole student population and knowing some of the data that the children are facing is, you know, if we wanted to put a resolution forward, I think one that would be welcomed and needed by all students would be a general, you know, bullying, harassment statement from our schools saying, you know, here, you know, just here's the data, here's the reason for it. You know, maybe establishing, you know, kind of similar to this resolution of, you know, take it seriously a month, a year that we establish a bullying harassment month, that we talk about this in our classrooms. We, you know, we do different things in our schools. And I think I just think we need to think more as we, us, as a student population, and not they, them, because I just feel that it has more of a negative effect of more segregation of our students rather than collective whole of our student body. But that's kind of my opinion on it.
Shannon?
I think in a year where families and students have been targeted because they are LGBTQ, I think that it's very important that we put forward a resolution, that we support these families, we support the staff members, we support the students. These students are at a higher risk for self-harm. And coming out of COVID, there are even new numbers that even more students who are LGBTQ are feeling harassed and are attempting suicide. And I think it's important that we say that we support and are a safe space for these students. I also think it's important, given the recent Homeland Security bulletin that was put out in support of LGBTQ communities that are being harassed around the country, that we stand up and say, we support these students and their safety. It's not an all students thing. These students are being targeted around the country, and they're being targeted in our own communities.
Peggy, did you have any thoughts?
I guess in reading the resolution, I certainly support the LGBTQ population. I totally against harassment, you know, the whole thing. I'm not against that. And I would totally support the resolution. I guess the only part that bothers me is the locker room facilities. I talked to my kids about the whole thing, and they were, I mean, they're certainly supportive. But the one thing that bothered them were the changing in the locker rooms. And if locker room facilities were arranged so that whether you're a member of the LGBTQ population or not, that you could have the privacy that you feel you need or want, then I could support the entire resolution. But that's the only holdup that I have. I mean, I certainly do not want any harassment or bullying. I taught school for 30 years, and that's not something that I allowed in my classrooms. So, and I don't want to see that in the public either. So that's where I stand.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think this is a good resolution. You know, when talking about whether it is or isn't a issue in our school, you know, I think when we have such small numbers, and you know, in order for there to be official bullying complaints, like it's a pretty high bar for it to wind up getting in kind of the official. You know, I think it's valid to kind of look at the general statistics beyond just our individual district to say, you know, is this still an issue or is it not still an issue? And I think, you know, when you look beyond just our small population, it certainly is not a solved problem by any means. So, you know, I think the one thing that I kind of was thinking I might be interested in changing would just be, you know, where it specifically asks the district to provide the anti-LGBT bullying and harassment training. And I just am, you know, worried about kind of how many mandates we're providing the administration as far as, you know, like we have the anti-racism one, and then if we add this, like there's a limited amount of CE for staff in the school year. So whether it would be, I'd rather just kind of trust that Jamie can provide the training that is needed to make sure that things, you know, are running properly, rather than specifically mandating or asking or specifying him to do specific trainings. So that'd be my one modification on that. But I don't know, do people have further thoughts, I guess, at this point?
Well, I guess I would, yeah, I wouldn't care to mandate any more on the teachers. I maybe recommend, but not mandate.
Yeah, I mean, that's what this would be, because it's a resolution. It's not like policy or anything.
Right.
It's kind of just.
And I can get Chris's point too on not labeling people. You know, sometimes I feel that if we just didn't label and didn't segregate groups, maybe it would just everybody would get along. But that's kind of wishful thinking. You know, in a perfect world, that's the way it goes. But I don't think it's going to happen. But it's. So no, I get the not labeling or the not, you know, having a specific group, because we don't want anybody to be bullied. That's for sure. So I don't know. It's,
I mean, I think the piece that is difficult for me is, you know, we want to provide data, which most of the time we seek nationwide data, right? And what happens in one part of the country doesn't mean it's happening in another. So that's why I asked for localized data that's happening.
It's happening here. I'm not willing to out the kids.
Excuse me, I didn't interrupt you.
Tell
I
you
would
stories
appreciate
about
the
it
same.
happening here.
Shannon,
So
let's let Chris talk, and then you can.
So I asked the administration for data, and I received data on how many documented cases that we've had. So, you know, I would expect some respect back when I'm talking.
I respect that, but a lot of these kids aren't coming forward to the administration. When they're called names, when they're bullied, they're not going to their teachers and their administration. They're ashamed about it and hiding it.
Okay, can I continue now, Shannon, or? So,
go ahead.
So I think the challenge that I have is one, how can we not segregate our student body as much as possible? Two, how can we bring real data into this? Because whatever's happening on one side of the planet doesn't mean it's happening on another. I'm sorry, but that is reality. I've asked for the data points. The data points are not favorable. It's not fair to ask to the board to prepare a resolution for one part of the population and not the other one when both of them are experiencing very similar issues. I can tell you, out of the 2 instances that I got from the data from our district, that one of them was an issue that happened with somebody that I know that is not LGBTQ, that was bullied and harassed by an LGBTQ group, and they were suspended for that. So it's happening both ways. I think that we should stop making resolutions for certain pieces and make them for big body pieces. The issues that we have in this school that we should be addressing is behavior. And our behavior correlation matches almost identical to the deficiencies that we're having in test scores. We see it in 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th and 9th grade. It's a perfect correlation. They overlap identically. And the reason why, in some cases, I think some of the intervention is warranted, but maybe not, is if we could correct the behavior in our classrooms, that correlation of our test scores would come up, because those children would feel like they're in a better environment, easier learning environment, and I think you'd see that test scores would come up. And if anybody tells me that the behavior in the classrooms, there isn't issues, I can tell you that I have 2 children in the class in 2 different schools. I get, I talk to them often. I know that there are students that, I know one in the middle school that was targeting kids in class a week ago and refused to leave the classroom when was told to. I don't know at what point parents allowed their children to disrespect teachers in class, but it happens all the time. I hear about it in high school, about one student in the math class that was dancing on the desks, and at that point that teacher has tried so many times that they don't even ask the kid to leave anymore because they know nothing's going to happen. So we need to address this, because the lower level behavior that we have in classroom escalates into the bigger behavior, which is the bullying and harassment. And when people bully and harass people, it's because of what they see or what they hear, or you're different than me. Rodney's different than me. Someone's taller, someone's smaller, someone's bigger, someone's skinnier, someone has a different sexual orientation, somebody looks different, right? That's where it escalates to. I would be more than happy to work with Shannon or another group to put together a resolution that would address the issue that we are having in school, which is bullying and harassment and behavioral issues, that I think would be a great resolution for all of us to adopt. But as far as proposing new resolutions for just certain demographics of children in school, but not all of them, it's not fair. It's not fair if we pass this tonight. It's fair for the group of children in this case that may be being intimidated, bullied, and harassed, but it's not fair for the rest of the population that is being bullied and harassed as well. That's basically us saying, we care about you, we don't care about you. So.
Yeah, I don't think I agree with that general concept that saying that we care about certain people means that we don't care about other people.
Where's the resolution for the other children?
Well,
That's my point, is I asked for the data. The data doesn't support it. We've had 2 instances. Two instances in 3 years, and they were 1 and 1. It wasn't like I got the data and there's 12 that just happened last month. No, there's 2.
Well, but you were just saying that there's an issue with behavior and bullying and harassment generally.
Yeah.
So that's more than 2 instances, right?
No, the data.
Well, all I'm saying is that, like, you're saying that we have 2 instances, which sounds like a pretty small number, but that we have a big issue with the thing in general.
Sure.
So that tells me that those 2 instances aren't really representing the issue as a whole.
But those are the 2 data points that
I know,
we have
those
to be
are the
able
2
to make
data
decisions.
exactly.
Now we easily can get nationwide data and say that, groups of children, at different percentages. But all children are suffering from COVID. All children are suffering from mental health. If you've had a child that has experienced bullying and harassment in schools, as I have, I've spent a lot of time with my child, you know, through mental health pieces to get her to the point where she's at now. And it just wouldn't be fair to continue to say it's okay, but you're experiencing the same thing and you're on your own. You know, I just, we gotta think about, you know, like I said before, we gotta think about we and us as a population, not they, them, right? They, them over there. No, it's we, us. We're all one. We're all one, you know, so I won't support this, but I will support something if we want to do something as a whole for the student body.
Okay. Shannon, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, there's no solid data on why our test scores are what they are and that it's linked to behavior. That's a causation correlation argument that does not hold water. We don't know what they are, but if you looked at those graphs, they start in first, second, third grade. We need to be addressing our test scores across the board, not just in middle school. And I agree we should be addressing behavior and taking on bullying where it is. But this is a population that I am concerned for.
Okay.
And I'm not getting in an argument. I'm just going to rebuttal that you can look at, we had the correlations, we sat here, the testing scores and the correlation of 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade into 9th grade behavior, which is, like I proposed before, that's where a majority of your behavioral issues happen in school. They're almost directly correlated. To say they're not, I mean, that could be your opinion, that's great.
Well, but
that's my opinion, but say,
Rise at that age, but that doesn't mean that they're correlated, that one is causing the other.
They're correlated. Whether their causation is the
right. but if I'm saying the causation's there or you're saying it's not, one opinion isn't more weighted than the other. I guess is my point on that.
Well, how do we want to proceed?
I move that we vote on the resolution one way or the other and get everyone on record, please.
Okay. Well, if you would like to make a motion.
I would move that we pass this resolution as a board on supporting our LGBTQIA staff, faculty, and students.
Is there a second? So does anybody want to second this, or do we want to? Okay.
I can't right now.
Okay. Well, it sounds like there's not a second for the resolution. So.
Now, I do want to say one more thing. So, you know, what we do here with the board, it's open dialogue. We all come from different walks of life. We're trying to do what we think is best for the whole body. I hope that we all can act like adults, regardless if things go our way or don't go our way. And the reason why I say that is, you know, and I don't want to say this, but I have to say this is, you know, back up to the flag policy that we had in May. And or it wasn't a flag policy, but it was a flag to fly. I was the only board member that voted against the policy. I was specifically on the record as saying that I'm very in favor of the group to fly the flag. However, how would that look towards future flags and things? We didn't have a policy. And the reason why I'm going to get to this, because I know we don't want to hear this, but this is what ended up happening, is that night we decided for it. I was the standalone one. The next day at school, my child was bullied and harassed, started that day with being called a homophobe and that her father's a homophobe, so she's a homophobe, and this came directly from this group. 2 days later from that, I had gotten an email that said, hey, we're gonna pause on putting up the flag because legal had weighed in and said we need to do a policy, right? That was my whole weighted argument of the whole meeting was, we need a policy, you know, but no. What happened is adults and children went and bullied, intimidated, and harassed my child at school to the point that she wanted to kill herself. She was targeted, she was assaulted by these children, and it's well documented, and they were all suspended at the end of the school season. So I just hope that sometimes we get things that we want, and sometimes we don't. And it's okay if Rodney and I don't agree, but we all need to act as adults, and we can't take whatever happens here tonight to go and project onto our children. I'm a big boy, I can handle it, but my daughter can't handle it. That's 12 years old, or I'm 14 years old. So I hope that we all can act like adults, and I hope that the children at school tomorrow that can act like adults when they're given this information. So that's what I want to get off my chest, because I don't want to go down this route again. So.
Go ahead.
Chris, I'm honestly very sorry that happened to your daughter. I can't imagine. But that was never, I honestly walked out of that meeting back in May or June saying, let's create the policy. So I don't know the group of kids that targeted her, but I am sorry that it happened.
Thank you, and that's why I'm of let's, as a whole, as a group, you know, I feel if we do things for certain groups, that I think there are other groups that get upset, you know, unintentionally, and then that these good things that we're trying to do turn into be bad things or have negative effects. And but I mean, I have nothing against any walk of life, religion, sexual orientation, or anything. I just think that we need to look as us, and I'd be more than happy to sit down with Shannon and put together a revised resolution that we can include, you know, LGBTQ statistics in there, as well as other sexual orientations of heterosexual or race, religion, and put it together as one resolution and bring it to the board. Because, I mean, I think it's very important that we identify that nobody should be put in this situation. So I'd be more than happy to sit down with Shannon or anybody else that would like to put something else forward.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll move on the agenda to the 2023-2024 announced tuition.
So this is, as those that have been on the board for a while are familiar with this, for those who are new and don't know what it means, every year by state statute, we are required to announce our tuition rate for the next school year by January 15th. If that falls on a weekend, we have until January 16th this year. So that's why you're doing it now in December, because your next scheduled board meeting is after that date. So the announced tuition rate is based on the budget as we have it today. So you'll see through the memo, it's the budget that you saw on the expenditure side tonight, plus a projected revenue draft that I did, just real quick, putting numbers together based on current year, potential projections for next year. We have to back out of that also what you pay for your home to school transportation, because that can't be included in your announced tuition rate, and also what you pay for special education assessment to the central office, to the SU. So those two items are also backed out. So you'll see that as it goes right down the list. So the base that we're using to develop your allowable tuition is $10,653,702. That's divided by the first draft of the equalized pupil number that we received from the Agency of Education on December 16th, I think is the date we got it right. Last Friday was the 16th. So that gives us a projected allowable tuition rate of $18,813. Your current announced tuition rate is 17.8. So you as a board can choose to use the 18,813, you can choose to use your current rate, or you can choose to use what you would like. This is merely a recommendation. What is trued up is then what we get at the close of the fiscal year when the Agency of Education receives everybody's stat books, puts all the numbers together, then they give us an allowable tuition rate. We don't bill back within our own SU, so we don't actually assess out any additional or refund any tuition. Because that's a decision we had made as an SU when we get announced versus allowable tuition. So here's your recommendation. What do you all think?
How does it typically go? Do we typically take the recommendation and use that number towards our tuition, or do we?
Sometimes
Last
we
2
split the
years-
difference.
Yeah, the last 2 years you stayed the same. So 22 you had 17.8, and 23 you decided to keep the same rate. You didn't want to change it based on potentially.
Right, and sometimes we just kind of come up with a number in between, which I think we did that once.
Yeah, I think that was my first year that we did that. We picked a number.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Jamie.
So I think we're working really hard to build interdependence across the SU and have this high school be an attractive option for other tuitioning districts. And so what I would say to you is that one of the things I think that has motivated some of your neighboring district boards within the SU has been that our tuition has been set lower than some of our surrounding districts. And so there's been some driving force there to start to really look at it and say, is the high school sitting in the middle of the SU a desirable option? And so that is part of why we kept it the same last year. I do believe we're making traction. I do believe that there's administrators across the SU who also appreciate the fact that we're providing high quality programming at our high school and can do it at a place where this district can still use this as a revenue stream, but it's not an unpredictable increase in tuition year to year that results in their elementary programming taking a hit, right? Like I just said to you, I have a neighboring district down the road. They're up over 9%, and a majority of that's tuition. And so I would advise the board to strongly consider not going up to 18.8. And, you know, I don't know what Sharon Academy is going to announce their tuition at, but this past year was 18.5. I believe we need to be in the business of attracting all the students around us that we can. And I understand that families may not care what the tuition is of the school they choose, but I do believe partnering with our other SU boards around helping us become a viable option within their communities. Part of what I think is motivating them is the fact that we have a tuition that's lower than some of the districts around us. And I also think it is a driving factor for some of our administrators to really push on the idea of, have you really fully vetted White River Valley High School? And all those efforts are important for us to keep our kids in our SU.
So if Sharon currently is 18.5, I mean, one would think that they're looking at a tuition increase, I would think, in Sharon, of something.
I don't know
right?
yet.
I'm sure they are.
I'm sure they are.
Yeah, I
don't know what it'll
mean,
be.
so this, going from 17.8 to 18.8 would be 5.6% increase. You know, if we did the 4% increase, that'd be to 18.512. So.
How many tuition students do we have?
Do you have
30?
42, I think, was on your report, correct?
Yes.
I would have to look.
So if we went up $1,000, that's $42,000
Right.
All I know is one at the elementary. That's all.
in the
of it.
total, you know, added to our revenue.
Now, so again, being a new guy on the board, so 42, when we say 42 tuition students, is that kind of average? Are we kind of up? Are we kind of down from, you know, let's say a 5-year average or so?
higher.
Or
No, we've been gaining, and that was in that
so we got
report
some
we sent
traction.
you.
Yep.
a little while ago.
I don't have that document open, and my draft, I kept it at 35 because we had that's what we used in the current year, so I only
Yeah,
have 35
it's better to
accounted
budget.
for. It's better to
We
budget.
budget less than what we expect to get.
Okay.
So, but my recollection was it was 42 throughout the whole, and that's including the ones that you have coming in that we don't charge for the Winooski, thank you. Sorry, it's getting really late.
And I think what Andrew was saying, I mean, if our budget right now roughly is up 4.25%, right? I guess, it would be fair to ask for that increase for the tuition of 4%.
Yeah, I mean, that seems reasonable to me. Yeah, I think holding it steady would be being overly generous.
Me too.
Go ahead, Peggy.
Well, I was also going to say that I realize that parents are going to look where they think their kid's going to get the best education. And I don't want us to look too cheap in that we are penny pinching and that we don't have a lot of extras or whatever. We can't look too cheap. It might look good to the school boards of those sending towns, but it's the parents that are sending the kids, and they don't want to send their kids to some school that's cheap and doesn't project that they really have wonderful programs and that they're better than such and such and such. So again, I think we should be less, but I don't want to be too much less and give the impression that we're cheap.
Yeah. We don't want to be the econo school.
No,
No.
that's good points.
I absolutely agree with Peggy that we don't want to be too cheap, but sitting on the recruitment task force with some of the principals from the area, one of our major selling points is that we are one of the less expensive options in the area. So I don't want to overshoot something like Sharon Academy because we do need and appreciate the support of those principals and school boards to get into their schools and recruit. And so that they have been very willing to have us, which we do really appreciate.
And just to give you some more data, the current state average tuition for 23 is $17,278. So that's what's paid right now in the approved independent school.
Which is what Sharon Academy was operating at prior to last year.
So what other schools, I mean, currently we have a fair amount of our children go to Thetford Academy, right?
Yeah, we compete with, in general, we compete with Thetford Academy, with Sharon Academy, with Hartford, and with Middlebury when we're thinking about Rochester, Stockbridge.
But it's really tough because the geographic over there, you're kind of got to go to Middlebury, right? I mean, it's tough to.
No, we get
It's tough to get over there, no?
students.
No?
Yeah.
Well, you live on this side of the mountain, that's why.
I do, but
No,
it's
but
not that far.
we do
Yeah.
get Rochester, Stockbridge students.
And
Well,
there's
there's some
Rochester.
Rochester students going to Sharon.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So,
sure,
I mean,
yeah.
if
They
they're
drive right by, so.
Do we have any ballpark figures on what
I can tell you
Thetford or
current. I
Hartford?
can tell you this year what they are. 23. I have all that data. So Thetford this year is $20,963. Sharon Academy, as Jamie said, that's $18,500. I gotta click through the pages in a second.
Saying stuff isn't
Bring it back.
I say we split the difference, go like 18,307.
18,307.
$1, Parker, $1.
Hartford is $19,500.
19.5. Yeah. And we probably compete mostly against Shannon. So we compete mostly against what? Sharon Academy and Thetford, mostly for.
Depends on which school district you're looking at. So if we're looking at Sharon, Stratford, we're looking at Hartford, Woodstock, maybe Hanover sometimes, Thetford. If you go the other direction, We've got kids from the SU, and Jamie can correct me, but kids from Rochester area, Granville, Hancock, they're all headed to Rutland, Middlebury. So it really, we have such a large geography in our SU that we compete with a lot of schools. So it's hard to know exactly, but
I'd say let's do 18.5. I mean, that's a 4% increase. Seems reasonable, particularly in this economy.
I agree with Andrew on that number.
Okay. I'll make a motion that we, what, is there a specific word?
Set the
Set the
FY
FY.
24 announced tuition rate at 18.5.
Okay.
Did you get that, Tammy?
That seemed reasonable too.
I don't see Tammy on anymore.
Look at previous ones, and it's been 4%.
So just move it that way.
So moved.
Did we get a second?
Second.
Okay. All right. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
I'm an aye on that. So.
Okay. Sorry. Assumed that. Okay. Now we're on to the Winooski Valley School Choice.
Yeah, so we participate in the Winooski Valley School Choice, which is part of the Winooski Valley School Choice program was started prior to statewide school choice. So it's important to know we do have statewide school choice across the state. But this Winooski Valley is the supervisory unions that originally made up the Green Mountain Forest Collaborative, which was us, north all the way up to Northfield, Williamstown. A bunch of these SUs have merged.
Hi, Steve. Hey, Popo.
Peggy, can you mute?
You got it.
There we go.
So this goes all the way up to Lamoille North. Starts with us and goes to Lamoille North. So that is Johnson. And the supervisory unions that run up the 89 corridor. So we have an agreement to allow students in grades 9 through 12 to access our schools, and there's a lottery. And so what we've done historically is go with the base for allowing students in and allowing students out. So we cap it at 10 and 10 has been what we do. Currently right now, we have 3 going out and 1 coming in. The ADM does not follow the student. So those 3 that have left, we still collect ADM on, and the student that came to us, that sending school collects ADM on. Right, Ray? Pretty impressive, isn't it? On it. Soup's in the know. So, my recommendation would be that we stay where we're at. That we have never gone near 10 either direction in the past. I do know this, that I have received some inquiries from families at Randolph over the last few months that were interested in possibly coming to our school.
So if we set the bar at 10 and 10, and let's say there was greater than 10 that wanted to come to our school, do we have the opportunity to adjust that at that point, or no? No. Okay, gotcha.
And you could go more. I mean, so I will give you an example. When I was at Williamstown, we were really into marketing, and part of what we felt is that if I brought in 15 students through Winooski Valley School Choice, that word of mouth was going to help me then draw attention from my neighboring district that paid for tuition students, Echo Valley. And so we were having a lot of inquiry from Spalding to come to our school. So we actually went 20 in and 10 out. And we ended up getting up to 14 one year. The theory behind that was it wasn't going to cost me any more money to educate 14 more students, but that word of mouth was going to help generate interest from tuitioning districts, right? So that word of mouth was going to help Echo Valley say, you should consider Williamstown, meaning Orange and Washington kids, which it did. We did increase a revenue stream by getting more Echo Valley students. Do I think it was based on word of mouth from Barry? No, it wasn't just that, but I don't think it hurt.
And you don't think we do have costs for added students? As far as
Not right now. It's not like if you said to me, Jamie, if you added 30 more students to your high school, do you need to add FTEs? The answer would be no.
Okay.
Our class sizes are such we can add more students.
So based on that, would it, again, we may not get more than 3 or 4, right? But would it make sense to adjust that number to what can we currently hold with our costing structure, I guess? Does it make sense? Like,
Yeah, we can't go over 20.
if you said if we went over a certain amount, we would have to bring in some new teachers or...
Well, Winooski Valley caps it too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We've never come close to getting 10. Or
There's a lot of unhappy
sending out 10.
people over Randolph right now. You never
Well,
know.
that's really
A lot of grumblings over there.
I'd say we keep it at 10 and 10. It's always worked.
Yeah, sure. Well, anybody like to make a motion?
Language?
So the motion is
This one's
that is that you would have the Winooski Valley School Choice capped at 10 out and 10 in for the 23-24 school year.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, any opposed? That's been accepted. Motion passes. Okay, that ends the discussion items, so we've done the action items for all of the action items.
10 is repeated.
We're on to the second public comment. Sure, in the back. Oh, go ahead.
Gene Krause, Bethel. Needless to say, I'm disappointed that you did not adopt the resolution. A number of things. When I was a kid and I went into the locker room, it was one big open room. When I went into the shower, it was one big open shower. I later in life started going to gyms, and I noticed that when you went into the shower, that there was some privacy. There were curtains. There were walls between the shower standards. And I realized that I had no idea what was going on at the time, but what was happening was that I had privacy, even though I was in a public, open locker room. That issue is easily addressed and easily solvable, if it hasn't been already. I would suggest that the appropriate group to ask about whether or not it's happening here isn't how many people have reported through the system, but it is ask the LGBTQ folk in your community. Ask the African American, Chinese, Asian American folk in your community whether they are experiencing discrimination. My guess is you will get a very different answer from the people who are most directly affected than you will get from school officials. And sorry that happened to your kids, Chris. But it sounds like there was a policy in place that could deal with that after it happened. I think it is appropriate for a group that disproportionately experiences discrimination and hostile comments. Not to say other kids don't get hostile comments, but for a group who historically and in our culture increasingly experience hostility, even on television. Watch the news. I think that it is appropriate to say to them, you deserve special treatment because you are, it's the same way we would treat person with a disability with special treatment in order to accommodate that disability. These are situations and circumstances these kids don't choose. And it's not about labeling. These are kids who are labeling themselves. These are not kids who are being labeled by somebody else. These are kids who are labeling themselves. When I grew up, there were two genders. It's no longer, I now know that that's just not true. And I believe as a culture, as communities, as schools, we need to begin to be more loving, more accepting, more protecting of especially those who are being treated disproportionately in harmful ways. As I said, I'm disappointed. It is happening here. And if we are going to be able to say to parents who might want to choose this school that your child will be safe here, even though these parents happen to be of the same gender, then I think that it's wise for us to say, if you choose this school, your kids will get a quality education because your child will be safe here. We have a strong bullying policy. We have a strong harassment policy. And we care about kids who come from mixed race families, from mixed religion families, from mixed sexual identity families. It's a matter of saying out loud, this is where we stand. As a clergy person, I have found that in my denomination, people will not come to my church without first going online and finding out what that church stands for. And if they come across something that, if they don't say that they are open and accepting and affirming of all people, they'll go someplace else. In my job, we have to say it. We have to not just believe it. We actually have to say it in order to attract the kinds of people that we want to serve. I'm disappointed. Those are my responses to some of what I've heard. And I hope this is not the last word on this subject for this district.
Thank you.
Hi. It's late, so I'm not going to keep you. I do have 3 pages of notes, though. I'm Dana. I work for the school. I'm the equity coordinator. I also am a special educator. I also worked in Randolph for 12 years, so I have a lot of experience with that community. I also have a son who goes to school in this district and another one who's going to 7th grade, and we'll see where she goes to school in middle school. And I truly believe in this district. Just working here for the past couple of months, I've really enjoyed observing and seeing who our students are and our staff is. But I do want to address the LGBTQIA resolution. I'm going to read because it's late and we're all exhausted. And I know it might not get through everyone, so I'm also inviting the board to have discussions with myself or our equity facilitators or our task force around these issues in the future. So first, the data. I'd like to just clear something up that I know for a fact that students do not feel safe coming forward and talking about their stories. They have trauma, they have been abused, and this community might not feel safe for them, especially the school. I think in order to have a true look at data, and I know I would bet my life it's definitely more than 2 incidences in the past couple of months, years, or whatever. We need an equity audit to have a true look into what is going on in our schools. And also, we need storytelling, and that takes time, and it needs to be built on trust. And that's for everybody. That's for not just one or the other. We need storytelling across. We need discussions with each other. I think I will have to also say that students should feel safe no matter who they are, whether they experience poverty, trauma, mental health issues, our BIPOC students, our LGBTQIA students. And passing a resolution for that does not make it the school culture, especially for students and staff and faculty who are furthest from fair education. That's not segregation. So we have to understand where these kids are coming from. And I also wanted to say that maybe we could start, instead of keep on you thinking passing too many resolutions, we could start an equity committee, and that could come down the line, and then that could be where the discussion lands and training happens, because I do think that all the boards in the district need training around their vocabulary, what's going on in the schools, visit the schools to see firsthand. That's it. But I would like to continue this discussion and invite me in. Thank you.
Anybody else who would like to make public comment?
Ed Sullivan, parent. I listened and tried to keep an open mind, and I certainly see what Chris is saying. And I think that did not know anything about an incident where his children were targeted, and that's completely wrong. I can't think of any reason why a child should be brought into their parents' politics, and kids should be exempted from such things. I do want to possibly present that this population is being given some measure of exception because they've been disproportionately targeted. So as a population that's been disproportionately targeted, this is making some amends for the fact that they have been disproportionately targeted for bullying and other such stuff. There's elements in the community who've publicly referred to them as abnormal and other, and that kind of behavior is the beginning of something much more nefarious, in my opinion, when you try to create a we're normal and you're other type situation. I do know that I would have liked to see the resolution pass, but I think as a school board, the onus is on you to have foresight, because as a parent, I'm interested in your foresight, not your apologies. And the thing is until it isn't. And we don't have enough kids here who are in this population, so on and so forth. I don't want to hear I'm sorry when something does happen and it's my kid or someone I care about's kids. I want to know that something was done beforehand. So really that's what I'd like to say, that I'm interested in foresight, not apologies. And I think something does need to be done to address this. Thank you.
Anybody else who'd like to make public comment? Anybody online? All right. And we'll move on to new hires resignations. Okay. We don't have any other. Future agenda items for February, we have the music
Sounds like you got the flag.
January we'd have,
Well, January will be focused on budget,
Warning.
warnings, prep for our book,
Yes,
annual
don't forget
meeting.
to write your letter.
yep, that's right. Oh, boy. When is that?
Sorry. We didn't get a chance to do a negotiations update. I don't have anything tonight, but we should put that on the future agenda, please.
You're gonna get a social emotional data report, which is the behavioral data you've been talking about.
Well, I managed to go till 9:30 this time. Might beat that next month. Sounds like.
To answer your question, Andrew, I would like it by the last week of January.
Last week of January. And our meeting is the second last week. Got plenty
If that
of time.
timeline changes, I will send an email to board chairs, letting them know.
Good.
Right now, that's my target, is to have all books done by the last week of January. And off to the printers.
Or you were saying that we might need a special meeting. Are you thinking after our next meeting? Okay. All right.
Yeah, my goal would be that we have a special meeting that's really to take action on three things: the work for the summer, the budget, and the warning. But that, like, there wouldn't be a lot of discussion, right? I think it could be a quick meeting to take action on those three things.
Basically, like, at our next meeting, if we make changes, then
Right.
that would be for approval.
Because I'll have in your board packets for the next meeting, the draft warning, so that you can see the language that we have together. I can make changes, some stuff, that night at the meeting, but anything in-depth changes, I don't like to do on the fly, because that's where we make mistakes.
Yep. Okay. Our next meeting is going to be Tuesday, January 17th at 6:30. This says at the Royalton campus.
It'll be at Bethel.
It'll be at Bethel, not at the Royalton campus. So I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Nobody wants to?
We just hang out here.
Yeah.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Thanks, everybody.